Chapter 81: A Dangerous Journey. Inside an inn of Rain Town. So, you just came back without getting rid of the guy? A crisp voice filled with irritation sounded. Rosalia had a livid expression while she clenched a green device in her hand. I already told you I don't want to draw any attention. Besides, that guy isn't easy to deal with. The voice berated. I never thought you of all the people will be afraid of some backwater town's mercenary. You disappoint me, lion. Rosalia clenched her teeth but didn't rebuke, as if she was more afraid of this person on the other side. Nevertheless, I can understand your effort and concern for the upcoming mission. But this is too important for us to just let anyone walk away with the information. You know what will happen if this news reached some people's ears. The voice sounded gentle this time. Rosalia took a deep breath and said, I understand. I'll get rid of him. No, replied the feminine voice. That man made you feel fear, which means he's as strong as you or even stronger. So, I'll send someone to deal with him. Just focus on your mission. Rosalia's expression twisted, but she could only agree. All right. Send me his address. He won't live past tomorrow. At dawn, Jacob had already packed his things after he got rid of Pighead's corpse. He headed toward the town station where one can hire horse carriages. Since it was just the start of the morning, there were only 2 available. For 3 silver coins, he hired a small-size carriage, which looked plain and was enough for his needs. The carriage owner was a young man with a bubbly personality, and he was quite energetic. But after he got an icy stare from Jacob, he kept his mouth shut and minded his business. After Jacob was done loading, they embarked on their journey toward the Lionheart City, which was 219 miles away from the Rain Town, and it will take them 3 days to reach there, according to the young man. Jacob sat inside the carriage as he looked at the small town which was now far away, and they were now heading on a dirt road that led to the main road of Lionheart City. Tell me about the Lionheart City. Jacob finally spoke as he looked at the young man controlling the reins. The young man's name was Pete. He was startled when he heard Jacob's question and quickly replied, Sir, you asked the right person. Let me tell you that Lionheart City is one of the biggest cities in Gloria Country, and it's under the jurisdiction of the Lionheart family. The Lionheart family is the in-laws with the Baron, so they enjoy a lofty status. However, before he could continue, Jacob cut him short. I know all this. Tell me something that isn't written in books. Peter staggered for a moment. I can't read. He mumbled as if he was in great distress. He was just a commoner, and the education system wasn't well established in small towns like the Rain Town, and only people with high enough status and money can learn to read or write. Jacob said, What about the Gunsmith Guild? Oh, I know about the Gunsmith Guild. Peter's expression suddenly brightened. The Gunsmith Guild is the dream of every blacksmith because they earn a huge amount of money since they supply every firearm in the kingdom. They even collaborate with the Star Mercenary Agency. Look, I bought this F09 barrel gun from the Gunsmith Guild in the Lionheart City. It can shoot 4 bullets continuously. I was lucky it was on sale that day, or I might have never bought it. Peter took out a 5-inch revolver from his side pocket and started to flash it before Jacob with a smug smile. Jacob couldn't help but felt this young man was naive, and it was a waste of time to ask him anything. He wanted to know if they rented their equipment or if he had to join them first. Now, it seemed he had to find the answer once he got there himself. After flashing around the small revolver, Peter put it back in his pocket with great satisfaction and said, I also heard the Gunsmith Guild issued a monthly recruitment test like the Apothecary Guild, and many people take it like crazy. An old man who once hired me told me this, and could you believe it? He said he had taken the test almost 60 times already, but still failed. Yet, he was still unwilling to give up. Jacob finally got something interesting and asked, Oh, did he tell you why he keeps taking that test? Peter shook his head with uncertainty. No, although I asked, he only said, this was his dream to join and learn from the best creators of the kingdom. He even said there are far more people like him who have taken the test over 100 times and still come back to try their luck. Intriguing. Jacob chuckled lightly. I hope they won't disappoint me with their equipment. After that, like a broken record, Peter kept going and going like he didn't need to breathe and only stopped when Jacob made him stop. But one thing that both Jacob and Peter failed to notice was that a few hundred meters away from their carriage, another carriage was moving on the same tracks. We got here in time or our target would have been escaped. A person wearing a mask said as he looked in the distance with cold eyes. Mistress told us to be careful, but he's just a coward who's escaping out of fear. Another masked person sneered disdainfully. Old Third, keep the distance and when they stop to rest for the night, we'll make a move and be on our way. He just made it easier for us to get rid of him and no one will ever know what happened to him. The third masked person ordered, the last masked person who was handling the carriage. Old Third chuckled coldly. No problem. I heard he's a C-rank mercenary. I wonder how many gold coins we'll get from his dead body. I'm more interested in those crates. I wonder if he's making an important delivery. If that is, we struck it rich. Old Second eyes shone with greed. Happy hunting, comrades. Haha, happy hunting. Happy hunting. We live for hunting. The four bellowed in full of confidence. Peter stopped the carriage at noon, close to a water source. Sir, horses need to drink water. It'll only take 15 minutes. Sorry for the trouble, told Peter as he apologized. Don't worry. Jacob waved his hand. He didn't mind, since he wasn't in a hurry. While Peter took horses toward the water source, Jacob couldn't help but look at the deserted road and the empty land around. However, his eyes suddenly narrowed when he spotted a small dot a few hundred meters away. It was quite easy to spot such an abnormality since there wasn't a forest around here. Another group of travelers? Jacob thought, and stopped paying attention. Let's go. Peter appeared again and connected the carriage again. Jacob nodded, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes as he looked in the distance. This is the only water source around here, right? He asked Peter. Yes. After this, we only encounter a water source on the main road. Peter nodded in puzzlement since he didn't know why Jacob would ask such a question. Jacob's eyes shimmered. All right, let's go. Peter shrugged his shoulder and embarked on the carriage, and they continue. Jacob, however, was now sitting in the back and he kept looking back from the small gap in the curtain. After moving for 2 hours, Jacob suddenly said, "Stop the carriage." Peter did as he was told and looked back in confusion. "Sir, what happened?" Jacob didn't answer and opened a small box. It was filled with meat. "Go start a fire. It's time to eat." Peter's eyes widened as he looked at the high-quality meat and he nearly drooled. He said, "Yes, right away." However, Jacob looked in the distance, and just as he guessed, the small stopped again. "They're following us." Jacob's expression turned frosty at this moment. Who could that be? But he acted as if he noticed nothing and make a meal. In the distance. "What are they doing now?" Old First asked with an unhappy tone. Old Fourth looked in distance with a foot-long bronze telescope and said, "Don't worry, they're eating. Do you think they can notice us from this distance?" "Humph. Let them enjoy their last meat. The moment night descends, we'll move." Old Second snorted. Old Four's mouth watered as he noticed smoke rising. He said, "We should eat as well. What do you guys have?" Dry jerky." Old First reply. Old Four rebuked. "Fuck? You didn't bring any meat for us to barbecue." Old First was dumbfounded. "Why would we? Do you think we're on a picnic?" Chapter 82 Four Musketeers. After eating the succulent barbecue meat made by Jacob, Peter couldn't help but cry and told Jacob he had eaten nothing like this before and kept singing praise for his cooking. Jacob merely chuckled and ignored the young man who seemed to have gone insane after eating barbecue. Although they seemed eating, Jacob's entire focus was on that smold in the distance. Even with his improved vision, he can only see a smold, so he was sure the other party have some kind of visual gadget which made him warier of their background and strength. Jacob looked at the sky, and only 3 hours remained before dusk started to break down. He looked at Peter, who had a blissful expression on his face. He said, "Is there any patch of trees in our way before stopping for the night?" Peter was startled by this strange question, but he quickly answered truthfully, since Jacob treated him with the beast meat of his life. "There is a small grove in our way between the main road and this one." "How fast can we reach there?" Jacob asked with squinted eyes. 2.5 hours if we speed up. But there isn't any need to since the sky is clear," Peter told. However, Jacob stood up with an impassive look on his face. "I want you to enter that place in 2 hours and I'll reward you with another meal." Peter's eyes suddenly glow like a raging fire when he heard this and quickly stood up in high spirits. He might even kill someone for that meal, much less drive somewhere in which he was proficient. "Sir, let's go." He hurried toward the carriage. He was afraid Jacob would go back on his words. Jacob smiled with a hint of coldness as he glanced toward the east before he coolly entered the carriage. In the distance, Old Four nearly choked on his saliva as he watched Peter enjoy the barbecue like a hungry wolf. He couldn't help but cuss while chewing on those dry jerkies like rubber. "I'll eat all that meat once I kill that hateful prick," he suddenly shouted. "Let's go, they're moving. We have to secure that high-quality meat." Old first chopped on Old Four's head and rebuked. "Then move the carriage, idiot. You are the driver, remember." "Oh, quickly, they seem to move fast," he said as they quickly embarked on the carriage and moved behind them while keeping their distance. 2 hours later. "Look, they're almost in around the Lionheart Road. I think they're trying to reach Lie Town before night. That's why they're moving so fast." Old Four kept the bronze telescope on his left eye. He said while controlling the carriage carefully. "Impossible, the Lie Town is still 8 hours away. They will be stopped for the night since there are still groups of bandits in the night. We'll get our chance." Old Third retorted as he held a map and pointed to a small town area. "He's right, and even if they got to the town, we can easily kill them while they're asleep. It's our specialty." Old Second laughed like a maniac. However, after then minutes, Old Four paused the carriage. "What now?" Old One sounded vexed. "They're stopping in that grove. And that brat is taking out the camps? It seemed they were planning to spend the night there. Fuck, that bastard is again taking out more meat. I'm afraid there won't be anything left for us at this rate." Old Four complained in resentment. "Shut up. You always focus on wrong things." Old First retorted in a gloomy tone. "Since they're staying in the open, let's turn it into their grave. Hide the carriage. We'll slowly move in. And the moment they let their guard down, heh." Old Second laughs cruelly. Jacob and Peter again enjoyed another delicious meal, and it was already started to darken, so they decided to rest and continue their travels at the first ray of light. It was how typical long-distance traveling worked here since they didn't have any lights on the roads, and it wasn't safe if you didn't have any guards. Banditry was quite an ordinary thing on these roads at night, and those rats ran extremely fast if they encountered anything dangerous. Nevertheless, as long as you hand your belonging to them, they will not bother you and let you go. Anyhow, the full moon illuminates the lands with the soft moonlight. For silhouettes suddenly flashed past tree after tree as they were extremely careful to not make any sound, and continues to move toward 2 pyramid tents close to a carriage and horses. One silhouette suddenly made a hand signal before the other 3 formed a fist in response and, with cat feet, they moved in. Each one of them held a long barrel gun close to their shoulder in a shooting position. This gun's barrel was 2 feet long and 4 inches wide. It was a musket. They all surrounded the first tent from 4 different sides as if they know who was in there. They have done this countless times. Attack. Old First shoulder before he pulled the trigger. Bam. 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 4 raging sounds reverberated in the vicinity like thunderbolts. Hee, the 4 musketeers struck again. Old Four, or the 4th musketeer, laughed out loud in pleasure as he held his musket on his shoulder. "Let's butcher the kid." The second musketeer laughed like a maniac as they moved toward the last tent. They weren't afraid anymore since the threat was already gone, so there wasn't any need to hide their presence anymore. Old Third, do you want to enjoy the kid first, like you always do? Fourth musketeer chuckled nastily. Old Third. However, no reply came, and he looked back confusingly, and what he saw made his skin crawl with needles. His three brothers' heads were cut in half like some extremely sharp blade had passed through them like a wind. And no, how? They were just talking happily a moment ago and the next moment they were dead? This must be a dream. This must be. He didn't dare to believe that after all these years of escaping death together, they would have died without even putting any resistance. Yeah, it's a dream. How about I butcher you so you can enjoy this dream? A devilish voice sounded at this moment. Fourth musketeer suddenly jumped in fright and wet his pant out of pure terror. Don't kill me. I surrender. Just make me your slave, but don't kill me. I know many secrets. Spare me, please. I was forced to do all this. He didn't care about his lofty image anymore and kowtowed like crazy. Jacob appeared as he cleaned the blade of his sword from blood and coolly said, "How about telling me who you are and why you come after me?" He spared this idiot because he wanted to know who was bold and bore enough to go after a nobody like him. Furthermore, these four were all C ranks, and if not for their moronic stunts, they might have resisted for a second or two in front of him. But they were extremely confident in handling others if things went wrong with their strength, and that also render their downfall. They underestimate their prey after getting easy blood for so long that they forget something. Sometimes, prey can be a hunter in disguise. Fourth musketeer quickly told, "We are 4 musketeers, SC rank mercenary team of Lionheart City, and hired to kill you last night as quickly as possible. As for the person who hired us, it was through the vice agency leader." Jacob's eyes narrowed. It seemed it wasn't your first time getting this kind of job. Yes, that vice agency leader is a black-hearted bastard. He always deals in such jobs as long as they paid well, and no one is strong enough to go against him while the agency leader is always out of city. Fourth musketeer had tears in his eyes as he cursed the vice agency leader who sent them after this monster. Jacob frowned. He had 4 people before who could pull this kind of stunt. Austin, who he rejected, then Ralph and Warren, who Jacob scared shitless. Lastly, Rosalia left resentful the other night after he refused her raid invitation. That old guy won't be coming after me with this group of morons. And he hates mercenaries. As for those 2 idiots, they didn't have that kind of connection. Or they won't be just small hooligans of a small town. Then it was probably that arrogant tramp. His eyes turned deadly cold. "Do you know anyone named Rosalia Lyon?" Jacob asked coldly. Fourth musketeer seemed to get started when he heard that name and couldn't help but told with suspicion, "I don't know anyone famous with this name, but I can't help but remember the lioness of Lionheart family, Rose Lionheart. She also vanished for months now. Maybe it is her who is using this alias." Chapter 83 Lionheart City. Lionheart Family. Realization dawned upon Jacob. He didn't even think for a second it wasn't possible, since the Lionheart family was a noble household, and it would be possible for them to have contacts with that vice leader. Since that is the case, you can be on your way. Jacob nodded toward Fourth Musketeer. He felt he was pardoned and secretly swore to take revenge on Jacob for the deaths of his brothers. However, the sword in Jacob's hand suddenly blurred, and the next moment it was right inside the Fourth Musketeer's skull, as his eyes were filled with disbelief before he died. Heh! Did he think I mean something else? Truly an idiot. Jacob smirked coldly and took the blade out. With this, the infamous mercenary team who antagonized the Lionheart City commoners and low-rank mercenaries were wiped out by Jacob. Afterward, he picked up the 4 muskets and also revolvers around their waists and some bullets and the bronze telescope from the Fourth Musketeer and knives. Expect that they weren't carrying anything else. Jacob mused they might leave other things behind on their carriage, but he didn't know where they parked it, nor he was interested in searching for it since it would only waste time. Anything valuable was on their body and they won't come without their weapons, which was the only thing Jacob was interested in. Afterward, Jacob goes toward the carriage and connects it with the horse, and leads it away. He didn't bother clearing up the scene, nor he was afraid that others would find out. He wanted them to find it out and back off while there was still time, or he didn't mind collecting more loot sent in his way. After walking for 10 minutes, a figure appeared from behind a large tree with a pale face. It was Peter. "Thank you, sir, for saving me. I never thought there would be bandits following us. If you haven't warned me and helped me here, I would have died." He was sweating profusely since he heard those gunshots a few moments ago. If not for Jacob secretly telling him to hide here while he took care of the bandits, he might have died today. He was really grateful to Jacob, who was even kinder than his real father has ever been to him. "Just drive. Don't cry like a baby. I'm going to rest." Jacob handed the leash back and entered the carriage as if nothing happened. Peter quickly wiped his tears and started driving. He was really touched. Afterward, they didn't encounter any more bandits or have any incidents on their way, and their journey was quite smooth. At this moment, Jacob looked at the 50 meters tall walls in the distance and two 10-meter bronze gates and their huge red words carved above those gates, Lionheart City. One of these gates was open, and there was a queue of carriages, while a small door was opened on the other side and there was another queue of walkers on the other side. He saw those people and carriages paying tolls to enter the city. Peter spoke unhappily at this moment in a hushed voice. "Sir, you should be careful in the future about walking in and out of the city because they would collect toll everything you enter, and only people who don't need to pay toll are nobles and anyone who is affiliated with those powers, like mercenary agency or gunsmith guild. It's unfair. Don't feel anger toward them. You can also be one of them if you strive for it. Cursing and getting envious of others is the easiest thing humans will do and feel better for themselves. But there are those with ambitions who keep working hard and reached a far greater point in life than any other. Everyone is born equal, just starting point is different," Jacob advised, with a hint of melancholia. Peter didn't understand what Jacob means by those words, but he felt they were quite profound. He was just a commoner with a low IQ. How could he believe someone can pass those great people with just hard work? "Won't I work very hard? Then what about me?" he thought with confusion. Jacob remained silent afterward as the carriages passed one by one, and finally it was their turn. A tall guard clad in bronze armor glanced at the young man, who had a bright smile on his face and impassively looked inside, and he saw the bulky silver hair man. He was about to question when his eyes fell on the gray card between this man's fingers, and then he saw C rank in big bold letters, and his heart skipped a beat. "We apologize for the delay, sir." The guard quickly apologized with sweat on his forehead. "Welcome to the Lionheart City. We hope you can enjoy your stay." Peter was startled at this time, and the toll he was about to hand the guard remained in his hand. He knew Jacob wasn't ordinary, but he never knew even those arrogant guards would fawn over Jacob. But he was confused since Jacob was such a big shot. Why did he hire his rundown carriage, which wasn't comfortable at all? "All right, let's go." Jacob impassively said he didn't want to cause a scene here, but he can't let those guards check the goods in those crates. He had seen them skimming through carriages before, so he had no choice but to flash around his ID. The guard quickly bows respectfully and allowed the dumbfounded Peter to pass. "I have never seen this C-rank mercenary before. Should I report it to the Lord?" the guard mused. He had known all the high-level mercenaries who lived in the city, and Jacob was new. But the mercenary always traveled around, so it wasn't a new thing for a C-rank mercenary to enter a city like Lionheart City for resupply and then left in a day or two. So, he thought Jacob was just a passerby mercenary and didn't bother with this matter anymore. Besides, even C-rank mercenaries wouldn't dare to cause trouble since there were Knights Guards of the Night Order in every city. The Lionheart was bristling with activities, as all kinds of people were moving on the roads and checking the different shops. The roads of Lionheart City were quite spacious and made of stones, not like the small dirt roads of Rain Town, where only 2 carriages can pass at a time. Furthermore, the people weren't on edge while walking, like in Rain Town. Anyone could stab you and take your things. The safety of the citizens was the most important thing for a city like Lionheart, or no one would come to their city, and the nobles will suffer a heavy backlash from the title nobles. There are two kinds of nobles in the Humane Kingdom. Nobles with official titles such as Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, and Baron. These titles were officially granted by the king. Then there were nobles with unofficial titles. The lowest was Tier 1 noble, and the highest was Tier 5 noble. Some high-level officers worked for these nobles and the kingdom. They also have a very high standing. For example, the Lord of Rain Town fell into this category. Nevertheless, lords like Rain Towns were still not nobles, but they were still considered one and revered by commoners. Anyway, these titles were the title any noble with an official title can grant, and these titles have their benefits as well. But there was a limit to which rank title and how many they can grant with their rank. Like a baron could only grant Tier 1 noble title to 3 people, while only a duke has the right to grant a Tier 5 noble title and recommend that person for an official baron title. These unofficial noble titles weren't granted like cabbages, since this could inflict the official nobles if the person with an unofficial noble title was caught doing crimes. And if the crimes were serious, even those official nobles have to pay a hefty price. That's why those official nobles won't grant these titles easily, and if they did, they would monitor them closely. The Lionheart family was such a family with a Tier 1 noble title, and they were extremely careful with their reputation. While drifting on the stone road, Peter was in an excellent mood since he didn't have to pay the toll for the first time in his life. He asked, "Sir, where should I drop you? Where can I rent a house here?" Jacob asked. The hotels weren't good for him because of the things he carried, and it would be far more convenient to rent a small house as he did in the Rain Town. He can come and go as he pleases without having to worry about others watching him. Pete thought for a moment before his eyes lit up. "Oh, I know a place." He quickly led Jacob toward the east of the city. Chapter 84. I'll take it. Soon, Peter stopped outside a building with 3 floors. Jacob looked out and saw the name, Silver Real Estate Dealers. Jacob knew he was in the right place. "Wait here." He nodded and left the carriage and entered the building. The interior was quite lavished, made with wood and similar furniture. A plump man wearing an expensive attire approached Jacob at this moment with a big smile on his face as 2 golden teeth flash in his mouth. "Sir, if you're looking for good properties, you come to the right place." Jacob nodded, and they both sat in front of each other. The fate dealer smiled fawningly. "So, what kind of properties my lord is looking for?" "We have many properties in all the excellent areas of Lionheart City." Jacob coolly stated, "I'm not staying permanently here. I want to rent a small house with a pool and garden for 3 months and I'll pay in advance. But I only have one condition. I don't want any commotion around, so it had to on a peaceful location." "Do you have such a place?" The fat dealer was startled by Jacob's strange demands, but he deals with all kinds of customers, so Jacob's demands were still reasonable, and he also seemed quite rich since he was willing to pay up front. Furthermore, with Jacob's build, he could tell Jacob wasn't normal at all. So, he quickly nodded with a big businessman smile. "Indeed, I have such a place and it's quite expensive since it's in the safest place in the entire city." "Oh, which area?" Jacob was slightly intrigued. "The Lion Street. This area is only 2 miles away from the Lionheart estate, and only rich people live there, even high-rank mercenaries. That's why no one causes trouble there, and it considers the safest area of the city," the fat dealer quickly told with a hint of excitement. Jacob had to admit this place had the qualification to be the safest place. "How much?" Jacob asked. He was as rich as those official nobles with all those Titan iron bricks, so money wasn't an issue right now for him. The fat dealer's smile broadens instantly. He knew he would be going to get a huge commission. He quickly told, "The owner of this property wants 2 gold coins for a month. However, since Sir will pay in advance for 3 months, I can negotiate the price with him." However, to his surprise, Jacob shook his head and said, "I don't want to waste time, so I accept 2 gold coins a month. I want to move this instance. Can you do it, or I can go somewhere else?" Jacob stated, with no place for negotiation. The fat dealer was shocked since 2 gold coins were quite a sizable sum for even an E-rank mercenary, but this guy was speaking as if it was nothing. But he was quickly thrilled since his commission would be high as well if Jacob pay high. He quickly stood up, afraid Jacob would go somewhere else. I can arrange that, sir. Give me 10 minutes. Jacob nodded and watched the fake guy running on the upper floor. Soon, the fat dealer appeared with sweat all over his face and panting heavily as if he had run a marathon and fat on body jiggle. Sir, let's go. He shows the key in his hand to Jacob. Jacob was speechless. He won't die with this much running, right? He wondered as he followed him. Soon, the fat dealer hailed his own private carriage, and Peter followed that carriage, with Jacob now riding within the fat dealer's lavish and comfortable carriage. After traveling for 20 minutes, they enter a spotless area with beautiful houses around and tree on the roadsides. Finally, they all stopped in front of this 2-story house, which was 200 square meters in size. It has a small pool and a garden. This wasn't small at all and made quite well. The furniture was also with the house, so Jacob won't have to buy a new one, but if he damaged it he had to pay. Soon, a dainty woman in her late 20s appeared. She was the owner of this house. The fat dealer introduced. This is Miss Miley, the owner of this house. Miss this the gentleman who want to move immediately, and he's willing to pay 3 months' rent in advance so. Before he could finish, the dainty woman cut him and she spoke coldly. I'm sorry, I have already rented this house to someone else this morning and that person might be here at any moment. I won't apologize for wasting your time since I wasn't prior informed, so it's not my fault you wasted this trip. The fat dealer's expression changed when he heard this and couldn't help but cursed Miley for being a sly bitch, since it was her fault, actually. Because if she had already rented the house, it was her duty to inform him within an hour so he could remove the house from the renting list, but she didn't bother. Now it was he who was going to take the blame since Miley's background wasn't simply as a small property dealer like him could headbutt her. Furthermore, he will be going to lose Jacob, a rich customer, as well, since he wasted the man's time. However, Jacob smiled faintly and said, I understand. But I like this place and I'm already here, so, how about I increased 1 gold coin in rent? The fat dealer's eyes widened in disbelief. His monthly salary was only 1 gold, yet this man was offering it like it was nothing. Just what is his background? Miley's eye shimmered in surprise when she heard Jacob was willing to pay an extra gold coin, which was quite alluring for her. Furthermore, she could tell Jacob wasn't from the city or she would have known someone like Jacob, who seemed to be quite wealthy. Is he a merchant? She thought. She hesitated before she said as her tone finally softened. Your offer is indeed quite captivating, sir, but the person I rented this house is an apothecary apprentice and I don't think it would be a wise decision to antagonize him for both of us. Apothecary apprentice. The fat dealer's round face loses all its color when he heard apothecary apprentice, and nearly wet himself. In Lionheart City or any city, in fact, one could offend any but someone from the apothecary guild because they had an extremely high status in this kingdom because of their skills in medicine. Although strength was important for a nation's development, what can they do with strength when they don't have medicinal knowledge to protect that strength? As a matter of fact, in this place, medicinal knowledge has a far greater value than strength because no matter how strong you are, if you get wounded or get ill with some unknown illness, then no matter how much power you have, you will fall. That's why these apothecaries were so precious to this kingdom, and enjoy a status equivalent to a C-rank mercenary, even if they were just apothecary apprentices which were as weak as an ant in front of a C-rank mercenary. Sir, how about I arrange another place for you? Give me 3 hours and I can find a house which satisfies your needs. It better if leave before the esteemed apothecary apprentice come. He suggested in an extremely respectful tone. Jacob sighed. He knew the status an apothecary represents in this place, and it won't be good to clash with one just because of the house. He still has to stay here for a while, so it won't be good if some quack will ruin his plans. All right, we'll leave. Jacob nodded, although he wasn't afraid of trouble in this place, but seeking trouble was another matter. Everyone sighed in relief as Miley in the white dress had a good impression of Jacob right now. She couldn't help but said, "Sir, if you don't mind the size or price of the place, there is a mansion 2 blocks away. It's 5 times bigger than this place. The owner is my friend's father. Although they want the annual rent in advance, I can make them drop it to 6 months." Jacob stopped and questioned, "How much?" 10 gold coin for a month, which means you have to 60 gold coins. "What do you think?" she asked. Even for someone like her, 60 gold coins were quite a massive number. One could buy a large house with 60 gold coins in another area of Lionheart City, but this place was the most expensive area. The fat dealer cursed Miley for trying to rob him of his job, but he remained silent and only wished Jacob would reject her since it was just too damn expensive. "Is there a pool?" Jacob inquired. The fat dealer had a bad feeling when he heard this. Miley smiled brightly. "Yes, much bigger than this one." Jacob chuckled. "I'll take it." Chapter 85 Trip to Gunsmith Guild. Afterward, with Miley's help, everything goes smoothly without any more problems, and Jacob becomes the tenant of a luxurious mansion on Lion Street. This mansion area was 800 square meters with a backyard, horse stable, garden, pool, and a small workshop. The mansion itself was built on 400 square meters of space and had 2 floors and a huge basement. Jacob wasn't shocked by the enormous place, since he had lived in a castle half of his life, so this place was tinny if you asked him. Nevertheless, it was quite a good place to practice his martial arts and other activities, which he didn't want anyone to see, and it was quite peaceful here. He quickly settles down after paying everyone their dues. He even paid some silvers to that fatty for his time, which made him happy. The mansion also has its own cleaning and security staff, so he doesn't have to worry about anything. He decided to rest for a day before he started with his plans the other day. The sun rose as Jacob also woke up from his peaceful sleep. Although he could go 5 or 6 days without sleeping, he still preferred to sleep if he didn't have anything important going on. After waking up, he first started to perform every fighting technique he knew 3 times before he would shift to another, and so on. It was his habit in his previous life before he stopped doing them altogether, because he simply couldn't keep up as he grew old. Now he was back to his old routine, and he was far better than he ever was, even when he was in his prime. Some moves are quite dangerous and a burden on the body if performed regularly in some martial arts, and even masters won't practice them recklessly. But he could do them without feeling any fatigue or any internal injury danger because his body was simply not normal. He could feel the more he performed these movements, the more control he had over his body. It was like his body was a weapon that could grow limitlessly. After spending 4 hours in physical training, Jacob was sweating profusely as every muscle in his body was pumped. It's time to use the pool. Jacob left the backyard and headed toward the pool area. He naturally wanted a place with a pool because of the water meditation technique. Although he nearly died perfuming it last time, this doesn't mean he would give up on it altogether. Furthermore, he had this feeling the art of nature wasn't so simple, and it might probably be a magical technique that can only be practiced by a powerful individual. It didn't mean for normal humans. The pool was 50 square meters large and 20 meters deep. But there were levels like the first 5 meters were only 2 meters deep, which was perfect for Jacob to stand up without worrying about swimming. But to make it even safe, he put on a 5-foot stone platform, and now with a push, he could breathe the air. Soon, Jacob starts the water meditation again. But this time, he only performed it for a house, and the moment he felt the 10G force, he broke his meditation to see if everything was right. Nothing happened out of the ordinary. Just like last time, the force vanished the moment he breathed the air. Content, he began again, and this time he did the meditation properly, and this time he breathed 4 times, and it was already 7 hours since he had started the water meditation. He could feel his limit was rising from 140 to 148, but he started to feel the toll on his body, so he stopped doing it at this hour. The workers wondered what the Lord was doing in the pool area for over 8 hours, but he prohibited anyone from going there, and they didn't dare to go against his order. Jacob finally emerged in the dining area when it was already afternoon. He was a cm leaner before though, which was a minor change in other eyes, but it was massive since he achieved it in over 8 hours. After having lunch, Jacob left the mansion. He still didn't have a carriage, and he didn't want it either since he preferred walking, and if he ran, he was not slower than an adult horse. Furthermore, where he was going, that place wasn't far from Lion Street. 5 miles from Lion Street was the city center, and this place never closed for even a second. There were all kinds of shops in this place, but the most famous were 4 imposing buildings that occupied an entire square. Furthermore, no one dares to cause trouble here, not even raise their voice, because these 4 buildings belong to the Apothecary Guild, Gunsmith Guild, Zodiac, Taurus Bank, and Star Mercenary Agency. These 4 names represent a status far scarier than the royal family, and no one dared to cause trouble in these 4 places. In any large city like Lionheart City, these 4 buildings were compulsory, and they occupied the center of the city without the need to pay for it. Furthermore, no other business or shop was allowed anywhere near this place's 5-meter radius. The Zodiac Taurus Bank and Star Mercenary Agency were the same. They didn't cause trouble for the other side, nor did they cause trouble for them. They exist like harmonized neighbors. Right at this moment, a man with an eye-catching appearance appeared in front of this 10-story iron color building. There was a huge golden signboard, Gunsmith Guild, written in fiery words. Jacob couldn't help but look at other imposing buildings a few hundred meters away, and each one of them was extremely eye-catching. Especially the bank, which had a pantheon-like exterior. But his goal for the building was in front of him right now and following robust men going inside. The interior was extremely spacious, and the first thing that caught his eye was a huge queue in front of a counter. Many people were standing, but one thing common about them was they were extremely masculine and gave off this intense feeling. Are they all blacksmiths? Jacob wondered as he was familiar with the traits of a blacksmith, and he knew the Gunsmith Guild was like the Star Mercenary Agency. They recruit daily, but their endorsement conditions were harsher than the agency. The Gunsmith Guild, as its name suggests, was the guild for gunsmiths and only gunsmiths. The firearm business was considered the top business in any region, and they had long transcended cold weapons. That's why many blacksmiths were forced to leave their traditional ways and learn the art of firearm forging if they wanted to survive. The Gunsmith Guild was solely made to research firearms and also to provide a platform for these old blacksmiths to become part of this trend and earn immense wealth. Jacob saw the queue, and then there was another counter, which was completely deserted, and couldn't help but go there. The bearded man sitting behind the counter sensed Jacob's presence and looked at him with uninterested eyes. He said, "If you want to take the gunsmith class, wait in that queue until the previous class end." Gunsmith class. Jacob was astonished. So, they teach in this place? He didn't know about this. The man looked at Jacob with disdain. You didn't even know? Are you trying to cause trouble? Jacob shook his head. I'm new in this place, so I don't know about the rules. Can you tell me how to join the guild? Jacob suddenly placed his hand on the table before he widened his finger, and a sinning silver coin was under it. The man's eyes suddenly lit up when he saw the silver coin, and his opinion of Jacob instantly evaluate. He smiled amiably. You know your way, huh? All right, since you're new, I'll guide you. If you want to join, then you have to be proficient in gunsmithing. If you're not, then don't worry. We teach anyone who wants to learn a beginner course for 30 days. Do you see that queue? You can register yourself for the class there. It will cost you 5 silver for 1 lecture, and you can take it as much as you want as long as you pay the price. Then, if you're confident we take a single exam in every evening on the 2nd floor, you can register for the basic gunsmith apprentice exam here. There will be 3 exams in total, and passing the 3 is compulsory. That's the way to join our guild. The man's voice was filled with pride. Jacob nodded in understanding. So, there are ranks of gunsmith? The man nodded sternly. Yes, gunsmith apprentice rank is the entry-level rank, and it has 3 levels, basic, intermediate, and advance. Above this rank is basic gunsmith rank, intermediate gunsmith rank, and advanced gunsmith rank. Let me tell you, there aren't any intermediate gunsmith in the entire Gloria country. Chapter 86 Scaring everyone into submission. Jacob nodded in understanding and said, So, as long as I have skills and knowledge about the gunsmith profession, I can take any level test? The clerk nodded. It seemed easy, right? But it isn't. Anyhow, do you want to start the course today? Let me give some friendly advice. Come back in the morning. You won't be able to participate in today's classes. They're already booked. Jacob suddenly asked another question. Then can I rent a forging room to practice here? The clerk seemed to be startled by Jacob's question and answered with disdain. Are you an idiot? Do you even know the forging room in the guild is the best of the best? They won't let a newbie like you anywhere near those rooms, much less rent it. Even I, a basic gunsmith apprentice, can only share rooms with other apprentices, much less a private forging room of my own. Only an intermediate gunsmith apprentice can rent a private forging room. His expression was livid, as if someone had just slapped him on his face. However, Jacob's next words made the clerk startled and nearly cough up blood. If there is no limit to the exam level, I want to take the basic gunsmith exam. Where should I go? Jacob finally understood one thing about this place. There were limited seats, and if he wanted the best, then he had to be the best, and he needed the facilities here if he wanted to truly make modern weapons. The only way was to become the basic gunsmith, which was the highest rank in this country. Once he got this rank, no one would stop him from using any facilities of this place. As for drawing attention to himself, gunsmiths were different from mercenaries and apothecaries because their only job was to make the weapons from behind a closed door. No one would pay much attention to them as long as they didn't invent anything new which can affect the market or nations. The clerk nearly spat out blood in anger this time as he stood up from his seat and pointed his finger at Jacob and roared. So, you are causing trouble, huh? Do you think we gunsmiths are easy to bully? Guards, come here and break this bastard's limbs. He was completely infuriated by what Jacob just demanded because Basic Gunsmith was the head of this branch, and this guy who didn't even know about the ranks of the gunsmith a few moments ago now wanted to take the exam. In his eyes, Jacob was simply ridiculing the guild and gunsmiths, so he decided to teach him a harsh lesson. This also drew everyone's attention, and when they heard what that clerk just said, they couldn't help but felt pity for the new guy who seemed to have offended this gunsmith. It seemed he didn't know that every clerk in this building is a gunsmith, and he might have said something which offended him. Now he's going to be crippled. Someone sneered, gloatingly, in the queue. Look at this tall, burly built. Do you think he's a muscle brain? Sigh. The young ones are truly fearless. But sometimes it's better to know one limit. No one dares to cause trouble in Power Square. Even those knights won't breathe loudly here. The others whisper to themselves. The Power Square was referred to as this square occupied by the four powers, and everyone called it this in every city. Anyhow, Jacob looked at the basic gunsmith apprentice as if he was looking at an idiot. He just wanted to take a test, and this guy was too narrow-minded to even think that no one can pass the test since he can't. He sneered as he sensed some guards hurried toward him with cold smiles on their faces. I don't want to cause a scene. I just want to take the test. I didn't see it as causing trouble. Jacob didn't act and tried to smooth things out. Bastard, still spouting nonsense. Beat him to death. It seemed we have been too soft lately. If we didn't show our might, the other might think we are easily glib. The basic gunsmith apprentice cursed viciously. Jacob's eyes turned icy at this moment, which made the basic gunsmith apprentice suddenly shut his mouth as he felt chilled and shrugged. Those guards who were about to attack Jacob also felt that strange chill and suddenly took steps back with horrifying looks on their faces. They were all fighters, and they weren't like that basic gunsmith apprentice who never fought in his life. They could sense danger. But this young man was giving them a feeling of death. Not just danger, even that basic gunsmith apprentice felt it. Jacob's eyes were now exempt from emotions and killing intent rage in his eyes, and he finally spoke again. So, shall we continue? He looked at the basic gunsmith apprentice like he was an ant who he'll squish. Basic gunsmith apprentice suddenly death staring at him right on his face. He never felt so scared in his life, and suddenly his eyes rolled upward and he fell back with foam coming from his mouth. This was the result of Jacob focusing his entire killing intent on someone with a weak heart, and after his water mediation, he could feel his emotions were more in his control and he could focus his negative thoughts on someone. This was a strange sensation that he only found out about after he practiced the water mediation for over 8 hours. Everyone suddenly gulped a mouthful of saliva when they saw this strange scene. Even those arrogant guards seemed to scare witless of this young man. The floor was now deadly silent. Suddenly another clerk, who was also smirking just a few moments ago, said with extreme difficulty, if so wants to take the test, please register on the second F floor. He didn't dare to show any arrogance anymore. The invisible pressure coming from the man with silver hair was just too scary for them. Although they were arrogant, they were not fools. Jacob seemed to be extremely powerful, but he didn't attack yet and only show his imposing demeanor, which made it clear he really wanted to take the test, so if they keep pushing it they might really make an enemy which no one can stop until it was too late. Jacob finally stopped his killing intent, and that strange chillness in the room suddenly vanished. He looked at the clerk and said, "Lead the way. I don't want to cause any scene up there." The clerk quickly stood up like an obedient dog, and in everyone's gobsmacked eyes, he led Jacob toward the second floor with slightly trembling legs. Those guards also felt they were just given a life pardon and quickly left for their own posts. They felt like they just escaped death. As for the basic gunsmith apprentice, who lose conciseness, they thought he deserved it since he dared to offend that scary monster with no good reason and get them nearly killed. On the second floor, there were already some people who were waiting for the test to start and also preparing as their lives depends on it. Most of them were old. When they saw this clerk was leading this young man toward the registration counter with an ashen face, they all become amused and wondered what kind of identity Jacob had to make this clerk this scared. When the woman on the registration counter saw this clerk leading this man with an ashen face, she was also bewildered. The clerk quickly said, as if his life was depending on it, "Sister Rena, register this gentleman for the exam of the basic gunsmith apprentice." Rena was a middle-aged lady, and she was doing this job for almost a decade, but she never saw this man on edge so much. She could sense something was wrong, but she didn't know what since no one would dare to cause trouble in the gunsmith guild, and as a gunsmith herself, she knew no one can force them to do anything. But today she sensed the fear in this arrogant colleague of hers. However, before she could inquire, the silver hair man spoke impassively. "I want to take the basic gunsmith exam, not basic gunsmith apprentice." The clerk nearly fell when he heard this and finally understood why that guy reacts that way. Jacob's words were simply infuriated. However, when he imagined that strange coldness released by Jacob, he didn't dare to lash out and blurted, "Since Sir wanted to take the basic gunsmith test, quickly inform guild leader only he can invigilate the test." Everyone felt they just heard something absurd because Jacob didn't seem to even be 25, but he wanted to take a basic gunsmith test. It was simply absurd. Rena finally couldn't take it and coldly looked at Jacob. "Sir, are you an advanced gunsmith apprentice?" Jacob said coolly, "No, it's my first time taking this test. But I didn't hear anyone is compliant to take the apprentice test if they had the skills of a higher caliber, right?" Jacob felt these guys were just too much since they were reacting as if they have never seen a genius. Chapter 87 Test for Basic Gunsmith. Everyone was speechless when they heard Jacob answer and looked at him as if he was crazy and deliberating provoking the gunsmith guild. Some blacksmiths who were taking this exam for years also felt insulted since this guy dared to say all that nonsense, as if being a gunsmith wasn't difficult at all. Jacob's words were simply ridiculing them. However, to the clerk who brought Jacob up, he wasn't like the others who felt Jacob was courting death. On the contrary, he felt Jacob was extremely dangerous and he might have some background. He quickly looked at Rena, who was already on the verge of an explosion. He blurted, "Please, Sister Rena, just alert the elder." Rena couldn't help but frown when she saw his almost teary eyes as if he was in grave danger. Could it be he wanted me to alert the elder because this guy was threatening him and wanted the elder's help? She quickly reached this conclusion and nodded. "Please wait." She stood up and left at the back door. Jacob didn't move, and his expression remained unchanged. while the spectators have another opinion about this situation because they could see that the gunsmith was afraid, and this might not be going to end well for Jacob if he remained passive. Nevertheless, they were looking forward to his aghast expression when the guild leader appeared with his weapons. They all know too well this place was the Gunsmith Guild, which supplies firearms all over the kingdom, and they had many hidden cards to deal with arrogant pricks like Jacob. It would be a huge mistake to underestimate these gunsmiths just because they didn't practice combat. Even those C-rank mercenaries are wary of the Gunsmith Guild's wrath. Soon, the back door slap opened, and a burly old man appeared with a dignified aura, followed by another old man with a slight hunchback and Rena, who had a stony expression on her face. The tall burly old man who appeared to be in his early 60s was the guild leader of this gunsmith branch, Drew, a basic gunsmith, while the hunchback old man was the vice guild leader, Olaf, an advanced gunsmith apprentice. They both hold long barrel shotguns in their hands as they looked at Jacob with extremely cold eyes. They had heard what happened from Rena and quickly come here to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. However, Drew was slightly surprised when he saw Jacob remain impassive despite seeing the shotguns in their hands as if they were toys. "Brat, I heard you're causing trouble and threatening my guild members. Is it true?" Drew inquired in a haughty tone. Those spectators had long fled to the corner of the hall and watched the show with cold smirks on their faces. Jacob calmly replied, "If stating my wish to take the basic gunsmith test is causing trouble, then, yes." Drew's eyes narrowed when he heard Jacob's nonchalant reply. Olaf suddenly laughed coldly. "Ha ha ha, a basic gunsmith? Are you even qualified?" He suddenly pointed the barrel toward Jacob. Jacob said, "Qualify, huh? The shotgun you're holding in your hand had 23 inches double barrels with 6 millimeters of thickness. This makes the gun's gauge 20. This size denomination comes from 1 pound of lead divided into equal-sized balls that will fit the barrel. This will make the shell with 12 pieces equal to 12 bores, which is why a 20 bore. Now let's talk about extractors, bolt, top lever, safety thumb piece, trigger guard, trigger plate, and hammer." Jacob spoke without stopping, which made everyone dumbfounded as they had no idea what he was talking about since he was speaking the language which could only be understood by a beginner gunsmith in Jacob's world. However, those two old men become pale as they heard Jacob describing the entire process of making a shotgun which shouldn't be known to the public like it was invented by him. All in all, the lockwork is extremely poor. I can tell just with the trigger poison that should be 3 millimeters back, and after 6 consecutive shots, the magazine barrel will blow. I would be careful with that toy if I were you, old man. Likewise, I recommend try making watches, you'll improve." He finally stopped without showing any sign of arrogance. At this moment, the entire floor was deadly silent. Drew finally snapped out of his stupor. Now he looked at the young man with fear and reverence in his eyes. Although something that Jacob mentioned about the lockwork was out of his understanding, he could tell he had greatly benefited from his pointers. See, could it be, he's from a higher region? But it's impossible for a human to go there and then returned. Or did he find some kind of inheritance? No matter what, he's a genius. I have to keep him here. Please come with me. I'll arrange the test for you. He finally opened his mouth. Everyone's eyes turned green with envy. They knew this young man wasn't just boosting, but he was a genius and he was about to soar. Rena also felt her heart tremble when she heard the respect in Drew's voice, and she knew she had caused a blunder by belittling this young man, and if he really became basic gunsmith, he can easily get rid of her. Regret filled her heart. As for the clerk who brought Jacob here, he felt he was in a dream. Jacob finally sighed inwardly when he felt this clown show was finally over. These guys were just too theatrical. Olaf's heart palpitated when he saw Jacob coming in their way, and he also knew Jacob was far more knowledgeable than him. If Jacob really passed the test, then he would be in big trouble. Just how did he know so much? He might have stumbled upon some technology from the upper region if I can get my hands on it. A greedy glint flashed past his eyes, but he hid it quickly. He knew he can't deal with Jacob if he passed the test and earned Drew's recognition. So, he played it safe before he took the next step. Jacob glanced at the hunchback old man and his lips curled ever so slightly, but he pretends as if nothing happened and followed the two old men toward the upper floor. While walking, Olaf couldn't help but ask with ambiguity, "Are you by any chance a noble?" Jacob coolly replied, "No, I'm a commoner. If you want to ask if I have a background, then no. I'm just a scholar who wants to learn gunsmithing. Is there any problem?" Drew chuckled at this moment. Of course not. The vice leader is very fond of talent and he nurtured many talented gunsmiths and all of them were hand-picked by him. Since you have no background, then this will make it easier. This will be your home. Even if you fail to pass the basic gunsmith test, I'll give you Advanced Gunsmith Apprentice's title. Olaf nodded in agreement, but his smile was very strange. It seemed you still didn't think I can pass the basic gunsmith test, right? Jacob chuckled. He could clearly see through the old man's words. Drew didn't hide anything. Although your observation and knowledge are top-notch, and even I'm not your match when it comes to perception. But there are still practical skills that are far more important than perception and knowledge. Even if you know about the combat, that won't make you a fighter, right? The gunsmithing is the same. Even though you have knowledge and perception, you won't be a gunsmith until you make a gun yourself. Jacob nodded. Well said. Drew had a good impression of Jacob now since he wasn't arrogant as he seemed, and that's why he said he would give me the title of Advanced Gunsmith Apprentice even if he failed. He knew as long as Jacob had experience and guidance, he could easily surpass him, and this would also make his branch famous if they produce a young basic gunsmith or ever an intermediate gunsmith. With Jacob's rise, their branch would get more resources. That's why he was so thrilled when Jacob showcased his knowledge. They directly reached the 9th floor, where were the most advanced smithies they had in this branch. The 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th floors were all smithies, and the higher the floor advancer the smithery equipment. On the 9th floor, there were only 3 smithies, and they were all for advanced gunsmith apprentices and basic apprentices. However, for Jacob, those advanced equipment were nothing but ancient, but he knew beggars can't be choosers. Drew spoke at this moment. You didn't need to take the first 2 tests since you have already proved yourself. As for the test fee, it's on the house. Your test is simple, as long as you can produce a revolver from scratch, you will be a basic gunsmith of our guild. Chapter 88 Passing the Test. Jacob could tell Drew still didn't believe he could pull this off, but he didn't mind, since he was almost done with his goal of getting a smithy here. He impassively said, "How much time do I have?" Time. Drew was lost for words and grumbled inwardly. Shouldn't you be worried about other things than time? But he still replied, 12 hours, and you will only get 1 chance. Although there aren't many rules when taking the gunsmith apprentice's tests since it was just a beginner rank, so we are lax in this rank. However, from basic gunsmith, things change, and you can only take this test once every 10 days in the Humane Kingdom. And you can't take the test of advanced gunsmith without passing the intermediate gunsmith test either. Well, it's not like you need to test for intermediate gunsmith anytime soon since there are only 4 in the entire Humane Kingdom, and it's very hard to make them invigilate your test. Drew spoke as his expression darkened slightly. It was as if he had experienced this personally and didn't want to remember. It seemed I can't jump the ranks like I just did. Jacob was dissatisfied with these rules since his qualification was much higher than even an advanced gunsmith, but they simply didn't have the means to measure them. However, even if they had, he won't show his entire knowledge just because of some benefits. He still didn't know how deep this gunsmith hold knowledge of firearms was, and if they were on the level where he can show his knowledge without being worried about setting a target on himself. But this basic gunsmith was just too low for him, and their equipment was the main reason for his dissatisfaction. He knew he can't create advanced guns here either, especially the ones with delicate components like automatic machine guns and silent sniper rifle. However, this wasn't the only thing he lacks, like he can't make cognitive radar, microchips, semiconductors, or add analytic engines and laser technology. These things can make an enormous difference between life and death. He needed a proper lab and equipment to make these modern guns, but he didn't have time to invent all this equipment, which would take his precious time. Nevertheless, it's not like he was hoping to get all this here, but he was still somewhat disappointed with the equipment in this kingdom. Fine, I'll start first. Jacob sighed bitterly and moved toward the molding equipment. Although he never used these kinds of old equipment, this doesn't mean he didn't know how they work. Everything had a foundation, and without it, you can't build anything. Drew and Olaf closely observed the young man. It won't be a lie to say they were looking forward to seeing Jacob's capabilities, despite different thoughts. Especially Olaf, who wished for Jacob to miserably fail, and then he can persuade Drew to drop Jacob's rank further to intermediate gunsmith apprentice so he could then easily control Jacob. In contrast, Drew wanted to teach Jacob and become a teacher of a future genius so he could clear some of his regrets and return the humiliation he once suffered. However, as time passed, both old men's expressions started to change, from surprise to serious, then horror. Because at first, Jacob looked clumsy, but as time passed, Jacob started to move like an expert, and before long he was moving so fast they didn't even know what he was doing anymore. However, as a revolver started to shape, they both thought they were hallucinating because Jacob's revolver wasn't like their traditional short-barrel revolver, but was completely different. After familiarizing himself with the equipment, it didn't take him long before he assembled a revolver, which was average in his view. However, it was the best he can do with these tools. Over 2 hours passed, and a shining long-barrel black revolver lay on the table with 2 golden bullets. This is. Drew took a deep breath before he spoke. He had never seen something like this before. Although this was a revolver, it had 8 clips instead of 6. Which was nothing but an evaluation in their eyes. Jacob coolly said, "This is Taurus 44 Magnum. Just call it Magnum. Just test it. I don't want to waste any more time." Drew, however, didn't proceed with the testing, and without explaining, he picked up the Magnum and 2 bullets. He sternly looked at dumbfounded Olaf and said, "I don't want anything about this out of this room. Tell everyone he failed, and I accept him as my apprentice." Drew quickly looked at the unruffled Jacob and said, "Come with me." Jacob could hear Drew's widely beating heart, and he decided to see what this old man was up to, so he followed him. As for Olaf, he had no idea what just happened, but he knew it wasn't as simple as Drew making it, not with that revolver Jacob just made. But he can't offend Drew right now, so he does as he was told and only hopes for Drew to let him examine that revolver. Even he could tell that the revolver was a masterpiece, and he had gained some insight after watching Jacob's lockwork. On the top floor, Drew led Jacob to his office and quickly closed the door as if he was afraid someone would disturb them. He quickly looked at Jacob, who had a frosty expression, and said while bowing his head, "Mister, I'm extremely sorry to do this, but it was necessary for your safety." "What do you mean?" Jacob's eye narrowed. Drew smiled wryly and put the Magnum revolver on the table, and sternly said, "Truth be told, you are more than qualified to be an advanced gunsmith with this gun, but there is only one facility in the uncommon region that give the benefits you deserve, and it's in Oriat Kingdom of Green Goblins. However, both you and I know those little bastards would rather kill you and offend the Gunsmith Guild than let a human genius like you enter that facility and grow under their nose." His expression turned extremely gloomy. Besides, even the goblins in that Gunsmith Guild won't let a human grow, no matter what, unless they had lost their minds. Although the Gunsmith Guild isn't affiliated with any race or any organization in Power Square, as the matter of fact. But everyone knows each race is selfish, and if they felt threatened by an enemy race, they would try to get rid of that threat even if they seemed peaceful on the surface. So, I'm asking you if you want the intermediate gunsmith rank, but that process will be lengthy, and you have to go to the royal capital. Or you can get the basic gunsmith rank ID in 7 days. However, I personally think giving you the basic gunsmith rank will be a waste of your talent. At least you should be in those higher-level workshops in the royal capital, since it would be impossible for you to go to the rare region. At least it is better than having nothing. What are your thoughts? Jacob suddenly pulled an amusing smile. So, you want to protect me? Drew thought Jacob was taking this situation too lightly and kindly advised, "I don't know how you get your knowledge and experience, but I know better to ask. There are many old facilities abandoned by many experts after their research, which they don't bother to destroy. However, Those useless facilities can be a treasure trove for a race like us. But having knowledge is nothing if you don't have the talent to use it, and you are a talented person. But sometimes it is better to remain hidden before you can grow. I can write a letter to the guild leader in the capital, and he'll know what to do. All remain is your approval. Jacob knew what Drew wanted. He wanted him to go to the capital branch of the Gunsmith Guild and remain hidden there until he grew old, and the other kingdoms won't feel threatened by his existence. It was like deteriorating his talent just because they can't protect him. He even wanted to laugh in disdain. He plainly rejected. Look, I know you mean well, but you don't have to worry about me. Just give me the identity of the basic gunsmith and a private room in this place, and I'm content. Although it looked like I'm after fame, but I know when to stop. Drew's eyes contracted as he got what Jacob meant. He couldn't help but thought, what a wily brat. He couldn't help but re-evaluate this young man in front of him. Jacob suddenly looked at the Magnum revolver as his lips curled. This Magnum will be my goodwill and appreciation gift to you. We both know you should be able to become an intermediate gunsmith as long as you research that revolver. It will put another layer of protection on me, right? Drew couldn't help but get shocked when he heard this. Are you serious? Chapter 89, Accepting a Mission. Jacob looked at the ID card in his hand, which he received just now. It was made purely from bronze, and there was the gunsmith emblem carved on the back, and in front was his name and rank of basic gunsmith. He had to admit, the Gunsmith Guild was really rich to make a mere ID card with bronze. It has been a week since he joined the Gunsmith Guild under the identity of Advanced Gunsmith Apprentice. But the fact that he was going to be a basic gunsmith was only known to Drew. Drew had to admit that Jacob had really played it well. Not only did he offer him the Magnum revolver as a token of goodwill, he even let him claim the credit for the design as long as he can make the revolver. In return, all Drew has to do is to keep his mouth shut and make sure no one found out about Jacob's talent, and let him use the smithy of the top floor without any restraint or disturbance as long as he wanted. For Drew, this arrangement was a piece of cake for him, and it was also what he wanted for Jacob as well, so he quickly agreed. But he still felt Jacob should be at least an intermediate gunsmith and remain hidden in the capital. However, since Jacob didn't want that, he also accepted this arrangement as well. From Drew's point of view, Jacob didn't trust anyone but him, and once he becomes an intermediate gunsmith, Jacob might use him to do the same thing and acquire the intermediate rank without anyone finding out. That's why he now viewed Jacob as a wily fox, not just any young man. Getting the identity of a basic gunsmith was quite an easy process. As long as Drew's rank didn't outshine the test rank he was invigilating, he had the authority to make the final decision. Furthermore, not only Jacob was now registered in the Gunsmith Guild's database as he was registered in the Star Mercenary Agency, but he also received another bank account at the Zodiac Taurus Bank and 500 gold coins to pass the basic gunsmith test, as well as he will receive 10 gold coins every month as a salary. The basic gunsmith benefits outmatched the benefits of C-rank mercenary. There were also crafting missions in the Gunsmith Guild, and as long as he completes them he could get rich in no time, far quicker than completing the mission of the agency. Moreover, he enjoyed a 5% discount on any material as long as he purchased them from the guild as well. Nevertheless, Jacob wasn't the least bit excited about all these benefits because he never joined these organizations for their generous benefits or money. They were all tools that he will throw away the moment they lost their value to him, without a second thought. In this week, Jacob had not only continued his routine with the water meditation and got leaner by 2 inches, with the parts he had Isaac make in Rain Town, and with more complex parts he created himself in the Gunsmith Guild. He created 3 guns and completely modified the firearms he plundered to this day successfully. Furthermore, he had also used the Titan iron to create a whole gun made purely with the Titan iron. If those gunsmiths in the rare region know this, they might curse Jacob to no end for wasting Titan iron. Even Jacob was shocked when he tested that gun, and he had to admit this gun was up to his standards. But the bullets were the main problem, since only bullets made with Titan iron or iron with the same traits can draw out its true power. But he knew it would be hard to acquire such metal in future, even in the rare region. Nonetheless, this didn't stop him from using 10 Titan iron bricks to create 100 bullet rounds. Today he was only here to get his guild identity card, and after taking it, he left the guild and he wasn't going toward his mansion, but on the other side of the power square. His destination was an imposing building with a star emblem engraved on the front. Star Mercenary Agency. The Star Mercenary Agency branch in Lionheart City greatly differs from the branch in a small town like Rain Town. The first floor was designed like a pub, and there was a bar on the west wing of the first floor where many mercenaries were chatting and enjoying drinks while some mercenary teams were discussing the mission. On the east wing was the registration and mission area. Jacob headed toward the east wing without any hesitation. He had already gathered information about this place. The reception counter wasn't crowded, especially the mission counter. A dainty woman sat there, and when she saw Jacob approaching, she closely looked at his unique appearance. Jacob wasn't as burly as he was a week ago, but his build was still heavy and intimidating. "How may I help you, sir?" she smiled charmingly, as she found Jacob quite attractive. Jacob coolly spoke while he placed his mercenary license. "Where I can get a mission." The woman was startled when she heard, since the mission board was on the other side, but when she saw the C rank on Jacob's license, her eyes widened and she quickly understood what Jacob mean. Although C-rank mercenaries weren't as rare in the Lionheart City as they were in the Rain Town, those mercenaries seldom accept missions in such a low-profile manner and with a humble attitude. That's why she was surprised. Even so, she quickly regained her composure. "Sir, please follow me." She promptly stood up and led Jacob to a private room without drawing much attention, and only the women working beside her noticed this, and they guessed Jacob's identity. Only a mercenary above D rank can make them treat him so respectfully, and may discuss business in the private room. When they enter the private room, the receptionist respectfully said, "Sir, take a seat. I'll be back with the mission log." Jacob nodded and sat down. He was here for 2 reasons. First, he was soon going to inject himself with the Tiger Bull's heart essence, which mean he would be out of heart and blood, so he needed to hunt again. Second, he wanted to see if there was another hunting mission that could interest him. Especially if there was some kind of news on the rare beast, although the chances of it were close to 0. But when he thought about his encounter with the Killer Skull Society, he was hopeful. That bunch was a terrorist organization, and a terrorist organization's job was to terrorize others by any means possible. He was hoping they would deliver some rare beasts to his doorsteps again, and the best way to find them was the Star Mercenary Agency. They had an enormous network, and if someone sighted such a beast antagonizing the cities, the first place they could come would be, without any doubt, the agency. Moreover, he had still an incomplete mission he took from the Rain Town branch. If he found nothing interesting, he can take another mission and complete bother of them on this trip. Jacob wanted to cross the 20% threshold before he started his journey toward the rare region, and he still needed some final preparation. The receptionist came back with a thin book and placed it in front of Jacob with a smile as she said, "Sir, these are C-rank missions available here." Jacob nodded and opened the book. C-rank mercenary mission. Danger level. C. Type. Collection mission. Mission. Purple crown grass. Uncommon. Reward. 1 gold coins per bundle. 10 purple crown grass equals 1 bundle. C-rank mercenary mission. Danger level. Between C and D. Type. Extermination. Mission. The notorious group of Stone Ridge Bandit. Reward. 100 gold coins. Jacob skimmed through these missions. There were all kinds of missions, from collecting materials to the assassination of powerful, notorious figures throughout the Humane Kingdom. Although the rewards were lavish bounty and assassination missions, he knew these missions remain unacceptable for a reason, and he didn't want to ruffle some unknown feathers without no good reason. Suddenly, he stopped on a mission that aroused his interest. C-rank mercenary mission. Danger level. C. Type. Investigation. Mission. Investigate the mysterious disappearance of people around the Lion Forest. Reward. 150 gold coins. Jacob's eyes suddenly shimmered with a peculiar glint. Lion Forest is 50 miles away from here, and I have to cross it, anyway. Besides, this mission seemed to be quite interesting. I want this mission. Jacob looked at the woman impassively. She quickly looked at the mission Jacob was pointing at and frowned slightly. Sir, are you sure? There's something wrong with that place. To this day, over 30 people have gone missing in Lion Forest, including 2 E-rank mercenary teams and 1 D-rank mercenary who took this mission before. It was originally an E-rank mission, but now it climbed to the C-rank. Jacob's lips curled. I want this mission. Chapter 90. We finally met. Jacob left the agency after accepting the investigation mission and headed to his mansion not far away. The past week, he only spent his morning in the pool area, since he spent most of his time in the Gunsmith Guild's workshop, and after an entire week he was finally done with the preparation. It was far quicker than he thought it would take, and it was probably because he didn't feel much fatigue despite lengthy and delicate work. If he hasn't exhausted himself with the water meditation technique, he might have done it in 3 days. Nevertheless, he now had greater gasp over his strength, and he mused he might reach the A-rank strength after he hit the 20%, or he might reach it before it. Well, it still remained to be seen since he can't gauge his strength, nor he wanted to test it in the Star Mercenary Agency. Those neighboring kingdoms might start a war just to eliminate a freak like him since he was human. One had to know that a rank was like a legend in an uncommon region. Anyway, today Jacob was also going to use the heart essence of the tiger bull which he had made in the rain town, but didn't inject since he was concerned about his body condition. Now that he had trimmed it down to a satisfactory level, he was ready for the next injection. He goes straight toward the underground chamber and sealed it. After making sure he was ready, he took out the injection filled with the red liquid from his pendant and pierced his heart without any hesitation. It was like a regular thing for him now. However, his expression changed when the liquid simmered in his heart. He felt like boiling mercury just entered his bloodstream. This heart essence is too potent. What was the tier of this bull? Jacob was alarmed. He never thought a rare species heart essence could make him feel pain like this anymore. Yet, it seemed he was still wrong. He remembered Immortality had once told him the higher species tier was the more pain he'll suffer, while it would also bring him just as many benefits as well. However, even the Wolf King, who was probably a tier 5 species, wasn't able to inflict pain on Jacob as he felt now. This means this tiger bull was probably a tier 6, or he was a tier 7, which made it a rarer species. But he knew it was impossible since that bull won't be so helpless if it was already stepping into the rank of a tier 7 species. Those hob trolls won't be able to capture it, much less kill it. So, this means it was probably at the very edge of tier 6. Nevertheless, Jacob would have done this again even if he knew since the more painful it was, the more percentage he'll get and reach the 20% quickly. The pain only lasted for 5 minutes before that comfortable sensation returned, and not only that, Jacob visibly felt getting lighter, both mentally and physically. The entire process lasted for half an hour before the entire heart essence was exhausted and integrated with Jacob's body. Cursed immortality. He quickly summoned the book so he could see his progress. He knew this wasn't a normal injection. Second level. Turn immortal mark into cursed mark. Completion. 17.02%. If I have one more heart essence at that bull's level, I might have broken into the 20% right now, Jacob mumbled with a hint of regret. He suddenly felt the urgency to move toward the rare region more, but he didn't lose his reason. He would decide this after this trip. The night passed, and in the morning, Jacob performed the water meditation as per his habit. He was already at the 153 mark, and after his last injection, he increased his endurance by 5 minutes altogether. He was quickly approaching the second hour mark. After 12 hours, Jacob donned clothes he made with the tiger bull's hide, and he had to admit just the weight of a shirt and pants was over 30 kg, and the long jacket was 30 kg alone. Nevertheless, Jacob felt comfortable in these extremely flexible yet soft clothes, and the weight was like non-exist for him. To hide the traits of tiger bull's hide, he used black metal pigment that was used to coat guns, and now no one can tell his clothes were made with tiger bull's hide, and they look just like normal clothes unless someone tries to lift them. He also connected firearms within his long jacket and his short swords hidden behind his back. He was also now fully armed. "I'm going out for some time. If anyone comes looking, tell them I'm out of the city," Jacob instructed the middle-aged man who was also the butler of this mansion, and he was quite reliable. "I'll see to it, my lord." The butler bowed in acknowledgement. Jacob nodded and left the mansion in a carriage. However, another carriage was following Jacob's carriage from some distance. Two men sat in this carriage. They both wore expensive gear and had muscular builds. The man with long hair lifted the curtains slightly from the window and looked at Jacob's carriage with his hawk-like eyes. It seemed the boss has overestimated this guy. "He's as carefree as a cat." His voice was filled with disdain. The short-hair man with a thick beard replied as he chuckled coldly, "I also didn't understand why boss is being so cautious. He's just a gunsmith with some talent. I didn't see any reason to follow him around with caution. We can just scare the poor guy and he'll sign his life story." "I think that's the problem. Since he's talented, we can't make a move without vigilance, or we might have to escape this place. Even the boss won't be able to cover for us like he always does." The long-haired man shook his head. "Whatever, but I had to admit he's rich to live in that mansion with all those beautiful maids." He licked his lips with a lascivious expression. Once we're done, we'll have our fun, don't worry." But yesterday there was a change in his routine. "Do you find out what he did in the mercenary agency?" he questioned while his eyes were affixed on Jacob's carriage. "Don't have any clue. He was there just for 10 minutes and left. No one seemed to notice him," he said with uncertainty. "Strange. Could he be selling his crafted weapons to the agency instead of the guild? But he didn't go back to the guild as well and returned. Now, he's moving toward the outer city. Something is strange about this," the long-hair man said with suspicion. They were following Jacob for a week now, and they knew his routine. So, this was quite unusual since Jacob followed a strict routine every day. A cold glint flashed past the beard man's eyes. "Do you think it's our chance?" "Not sure, but you should contact the boss. We can't move carelessly. I'll follow him for now. Meet me at point 3 in an hour after you get our next instruction," he declared. "All right." The bearded man nodded, and he jumped from the moving carriage and landed on the ground like an agile cat before he swiftly moved and vanished into the trees. After half an hour, Jacob disembarked the carriage and left the Lionheart City on foot from the west gate, since it was closest to the lion forest. The long-hair man observed it from an alleyway and frowned. "He left the city? Should I follow him or wait for Brute? I can't let him get out of my sight. I'll leave a message for him." When Jacob was over a mile away from the city when he suddenly vanished behind a tree. Where did he go? He couldn't help but rub his eyes in confusion since the man was just walking a few tens of meters away from him, and suddenly, he vanished behind a tree like a ghost. Is he resting? He thought, and remain hidden. However, an icy voice rang at this moment with a hint of mockery. "We finally met, huh?" The long-hair man suddenly jumped in horror when this voice sounded from right behind him. However, before he could react, a powerful hand gripped his neck from behind, and it was so strong he felt he was in the grip of a metal claw. "Aye." He choked under that tightening grip as he put his arm around that stony hand to escape from that grip. But alas, he was helpless. Jacob's murderous voice rang again. "Now you have two choices. I can chock the lights out of you, or you can tell me why you were following me around. If you chose the first option, keep struggling, and if you chose the latter, then stop." Chapter 91 Discovery. Now you have two choices. Either I can chock the lights out of you, or you can tell me why you were following me around. If you chose the first option, keep struggling, and if you chose the latter, then stop. Hearing Jacob's icy voice, in the end, the long-hair man chose the latter since he can't even flinch from Jacob's grip, much less escaped from it. He was utterly horrified at how strong Jacob was. Even a C-rank mercenary won't be able to manhandle him if he put his everything. But in front of Jacob, he was like a 2-year-old child. Jacob finally loosened the grip, but he didn't let go. Now start signing your life story, or I can simply put a full stop to it. Jacob chuckled mockingly. He heard us. This gave him another jolt. They were talking in the close carriage, and he himself observed Jacob's carriage was 20 meters away from theirs all the time. It was completely impossible for Jacob to hear them from that distance with all the noise pollution. He even started to consider Jacob some rare monster who was in human disguise. He knew they had wholly miscalculated Jacob's strength and abilities. Likewise, he wasn't just some helpless, talented youth. But he was a sleeping tiger, and they had ruffled the tiger's whiskers. He quickly told without hiding anything. It was Vice Guild Master Olaf who commissioned the Vice Leader Kite to keep a close eye on you. We were simply following order. We have no other motives. Jacob wasn't surprised by Olaf's involvement. That old man always looked at him as if he was prey, but he restrained himself because of Drew and never mess with him. However, he didn't expect Olaf would seek help from the vice leader of the Star Mercenary Agency, Kite. It seemed that old guy was waiting for a chance so he could beat the secret out of me while he could also keep his hands clean even if things go south. Jacob sneered coldly. Since he had already confirmed Olaf's scheme, which he only considered an ant's dream, he didn't need this guy anymore. Without giving any chance, he clutched his hand. Crush. The man's neck was crushed completely, without any resistance. He died before he even reacted. Jacob coolly threw the limp body to the side and moved on. He didn't even bother with the man's belongings, since he knew he won't find anything that could interest him on this small fry. He only acted because these guys were following him like annoying flies for days now, but he didn't act since he wasn't done with his preparations. However, now, he wasn't afraid of showing his prowess and drawing attention anymore. Before, he only showed the tip of the iceberg so he could use the workshop in the Gunsmith Guild as much as he wished and peacefully while Drew covered for him until he was done. Now that he was done, they can come as they wish. A few hours later, Jacob finally reached the lion forest, which was spread over 50 miles, and there were some uncommon species residing in this place. However, what really drew him to this place wasn't the mission, but he felt a peculiar sensation within his heart when he passed this place in Peter's carriage. He simply thought it was his imagination, but after seeing the mission, he thought otherwise. Out of curiosity, he took the mission. Since he was going to pass this place, he didn't mind taking a detour. On the contrary, if he crossed the lion forest, he would get to the Rainy Mountain Range in half the time he is required to travel on the safe route. After crossing a few miles, he was carefully walked between towering trees. Suddenly, a silhouette lunged at him out of nowhere. Fast. Jacob's agility shifted his body and dodged the sharp fangs, and the silhouette missed the sneak attack. It directly landed on the ground and started escaping. It was a 1-meter-long black snake with small brown dots on its body. An uncommon raptor snake. It seemed I'm having snake soup for dinner. Jacob smirked before he swiftly moved his hand and a dark streak shot toward the raptor snake which was crawling away. Peng! The short sword directly pierced through its head and pinned it down in its place. However, right at this moment, faint smoke started to rise from the group all of a sudden. Jacob's expression changed drastically from this sudden turn of events and quickly picked up his sword. He didn't care about the snake anymore, since he could feel his senses were starting to get disenabled the moment this mysterious smoke appeared. Sedation gas. Jacob quickly stopped respiring. His heart palpitated because even with his mental fortitude, he felt slightly dizzy with a faint whiff of this smoke. He knew he had entered a trap and someone who could escape his sharp hearing had to be an expert or he had accidentally triggered this trap. Nonetheless, he would not wait here to find the exact reason, as he ran at full speed. Because of his water meditation, he could hold his breath like this for over an hour, but his skin started to burn as it came in contact with this strange gas, which made it somewhat difficult for him. After running for over 500 meters, he finally emerged from the smoke and his complexion was pale red as thick vines bulged on his forehead. He finally breathed fresh air, and his complex started to recover. He was feeling extreme rage all of a sudden. A gas nearly did him. Who could have this kind of gas, and why did it set up in this place? Even C-rank mercenary might not escape, Jacob mused with a dark expression. He could tell this gas wasn't just effective with breathing, but it can also affect someone with skin contact as well. If not for his powerful body, he might have already been laying somewhere on that smoke screen. Hee, it seemed I captured another one. A vague, uncanny voice rang from some distance. Jacob snapped out of his stupor and moved his body and hid behind a tree while he controlled his jittering breathing. Thereupon, a 1.2 feet tall cloaked figure appeared in his view. Although he can't see the face, he saw a small cylinder belted around this person's waist and a slender tube attached to it. An oxygen mask. Jacob's expression turned frosty with a tingle of astonishment. He now knew who the culprit behind that smoke was. However, he didn't act and observed. He now had a deep understanding of the Humane Kingdom's strength and what they were capable of. Although an oxygen cylinder can be bought from the Apothecary Guild with some connections, but it was as expensive as 50 gold coins. Furthermore, that guy's equipment was far more refined than Jacob had seen until now. They were almost at Decker's lab level. That cloaked figure unhurriedly entered the smoke screen like he was strolling in his backyard. Jacob suddenly took out a bottle filled with dark liquid. It was the last bottle he had from the dark liquid tank in Decker's lab. His recovery was extremely slow, and now this stranger appeared he needed to recover faster. So, he quickly took a mouthful and a cold sensation spread all over his body. He started to recover at a visible rate. It was worth saving it. Jacob was glad and stored the bottle away quickly. He never thought he would be forced to use it in the uncommon region of all the places. Now, he was even more curious yet vengeful toward the person who set up that trap. Damn it, how could a snake waste a the gas trap? A confused yet angry cussing sounded at this moment, and the cloaked figure appeared again. Now I have to go back empty-handed and even have to replace the trap. Damn that worm. He wasn't happy about what he found inside the smokescreen. Jacob had a stiff expression when he heard this. What a loose mouth. It seemed he wasn't afraid someone would hear him. Well, he made it easier for me now. But there should be more of such traps. I have to be careful. If I could just make X-ray glasses. He felt like cussing right now. Nevertheless, soon, an icy smirk emerged on his face, before he started to follow the cloaked figure every step without missing any. He wasn't sure if there were more of those bomb traps or not, but he was sure that loose mouth won't trigger one himself. It was already getting dark. After following that cloaked figure for 2 hours, they reached a water source, and just as Jacob was wondering where the hideout was, that cloaked figure suddenly put his hand on a tree trunk and his icy voice rang. Now, are you going to come out or I'll make you? Chapter 92 Glean Gnome. With one hand on the small tree trunk, the cloaked figure suddenly turned right in Jacob's direction, and an icy voice rang. Now, are you going to come out or I'll make you? Jacob's heart churned at this moment. How? He was completely clueless about how this guy was able to find him out despite his carefulness, and he even managed to lead him into a trap instead of his base location. Not only this guy kept his heartbeat steady, but he didn't lose his calm demeanor, which also made Jacob believe he was in control while he was foolishly walking in a trap. If you don't come out in 10 seconds, I'll activate this mechanism which will trigger another smoke trap, and trust me when I say the previous smoke was child play in comparison to this one. And its range is 10 miles. Although I don't know how you managed to escape the previous trap, I'm sure like hell you'll not be going to escape this one. Bang bang. Before he could finish, bullet shots rang in quick succession, and they were accurately aimed at his hand on the tree bark. Heh, why talk so much? Since you need to press it, I just need to make sure you don't. What a moron. Jacob scoffed at the other party's idiocy. However, Jacob was given a fright when a transparent red barrier suddenly appeared around the cloaked figure, and the bullets reflected like rubble balls the moment they contacted it. Ha 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 ha. And here I thought someone got the wind of our mission and came here to intercept us. But it's just an ignorant piggy who got lucky. A hysteric laugh sounded from that person, and there was a hint of relief in his voice as if the water was under the bridge now. Is that a particle barrier? Jacob finally felt he was in danger when he saw the red barrier and heard that person's hysteric tone. He knew he had terribly underestimated his opponent this time, and he was extremely confident in dealing with him, or he won't be spouting nonsense. However, he knew there wasn't any point in regretting it now. But he had to prevent him from triggering that trap because he could feel he didn't want to activate it. That was why he wanted to draw him out with threats. Before, Jacob felt a little threatened by this smoke trap, however. Now that he sees the translucent barrier, he didn't dare to take risks wantonly anymore. "You win," he said, and walked out with a magnum revolver in his hand. Just as Jacob thought, that cloaked figure didn't activate the trap and still wait for Jacob to come out of his own accord. "Ha ha ha. Little piggy, now you understand. No matter how an ant struggle or grow, it can never shake the tree. Now obediently shot yourself in kneecaps, and save yourself a world of pain, or I can let you dissociate slowly, your choice." He spoke with extreme confidence, as if everything was under control. However, Jacob remained calm while his eyes were affixed to that barrier all this time. He blurted, "I'm curious, that barrier is probably made with argon and neon in the air, right? It's not man-made, but an auxiliary device triggered this phenomenon. Quite fascinating that you guys have such technology. Are you from rare region? Argon and neon? What are you talking about?" The cloaked figure seemed clueless about what Jacob just said, and then he sneered coldly. "Don't play games with me, piggy. You are not qualified to even speak the name of the rare region. Cursed immortality." Jacob quickly summoned. The moment the floating book appeared, he commanded, "What tier is his species? Tell me in detail." He knew if he wanted to turn this situation around, he needed to know what kind of monster he was dealing with. Mutual destruction was the last option. That's a green gnome, a tier 6 species. It had reached the limit of his bloodline, and it might be a genius of its race. A green gnome is a top-notch intelligent species when it came to gathering information or tracking, and it's difficult to sneak up on them. They had far better hearing than the bronze goblin you encountered previously, and they can hear even the slightest chance in airflow. Ha 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 ha. He must have seen you coming from a mile and you walk right into his trap. How interesting. A tier 6, huh? Well, it seemed my luck is not bad. Jacob didn't mind Immortica's mocking. He was silently thrilled when he read this little guy had reached his full potential. Green Gnome seemed to have lost his cool at this moment, was about to take out something from his cloak, and Jacob heard it loud and clear. "If your barrier can even reflect a bullet as fast as the speed of sound, then I surrender." Jacob suddenly uttered before the magnum in his hand vanished and two black components 1 meter each in size appeared in his hand. One was a slender pitch-black barrel while the other was the exquisite body. What? Green Gnome was startled when he saw those parts appearing out of thin air, and he even forgot what was he doing. Without wasting a moment, Jacob quickly connected both parts, and a 2-meter-long sniper rifle, entirely made of Titan iron, emerged. He named it Titan Sniper. This rifle was his biggest trump card, but he never thought he would use this in the uncommon region. Nevertheless, he had kept it loaded so he could use it at a moment's notice, like just now. He quickly pulled the trigger after aiming at the point-blank range, while his opponent was still shocked by his infinity pendant. Boom! A booming sound rang in the vicinity. The red translucent barrier instantly shattered like glass, and the Titan iron bullet blew the Green Gnome's hand on the tree bark into smithereens. Oh! A ghastly howl soon followed suit. Jacob was quite satisfied with the Titan sniper's prowess, but he wasn't done. He quickly closed in the slap that shrilled Green Gnome from that tree's range. "You nearly got me there. I should commend you for that." Jacob finally felt relieved. "Why you? What are you? You can't kill me, or the entire uncommon region will be destroyed." The Green Gnome threatened while suppressing the pain. He never thought his opponent would be a way to break past his defense. Furthermore, he knew just how powerful that barrier was. Even an ordinary A-rank mercenary was helpless against it, and the weapons that can break this barrier were even more costly than that barrier. Besides, only someone with a particular status can purchase them, not just any random Tom, Dick, and Harry. The Glee gnome could tell Jacob was just a human, and humans could never have this kind of authority in the rare region to get their hands on these weapons. That's why he thought Jacob might have stumbled on this weapon by chance, but he was extremely confused about how it appeared out of thin air. He decided to escape with his life first and then alert his family. He will come back prepared next time and hunt Jacob down, even if he had to turn every stone in the uncommon region. How could a glorious genius of his race lose his arm to some inferior race? He was extremely arrogant and would not let this matter end until he tortured Jacob in the coolest way. But first, he had to pretend that he will not seek revenge and escape with his life. However, Jacob's next words send him the chills. Oh, you'll be doing those worthless idiots a favor if you can really put them out of their misery. But I'm afraid you don't have this kind of authority to do so, or you guys won't be just snooping around like gutter rats. Let me guess, there's someone extremely powerful who is protecting the uncommon region, or you guys would never let it flourish or let it grow freely. Am I right? Jacob coolly stated as a matter of fact as he walked closer to the cloaked Glee gnome. Lunatic. Glee gnome could only think of Jacob like this, but he had to admit Jacob had almost guessed the entire truth about the uncommon region. But he can't show weakness right now. Why if you let me go, I can let you enter the rare region and give you riches you can't even dream about. He used the biggest temptation that any uncommon species longed for. I can go there by myself. After seeing you, I won't stay here for long. I'll be just narrowing my view and keep belittling other races like you. There are still many things to learn for me. You just make it clearer. If I stay in this environment any longer, I might die because of my own ignorance. Jacob sighed with deplored. Chapter 93, Finding the Hideout. Just as Jacob's voice trailed off. Ha 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 ha. The Glee gnome suddenly laughed hysterically as if he heard the biggest joke of his life. Despite the weakness in his voice, it sounded extremely creepy. He menacingly uttered, "Dream on, little piggy. If you think you can go to the rare region with that weapon of yours, then you really have a death wish." Jacob merely chuckled, with a hint of killing intent. "It seemed you know quite a lot, huh? How about helping me out, then? As long as you give information about the rare region as well as tell me what were you doing here, I'll give you a quick death." Glee gnome suddenly moved his hand and a small dagger appeared, and without any hesitation, he stabbed toward the small cylinder belted around his waist. He knew Jacob would never let him go. He was simply too indifferent and cold. So, he decided to end his life as well as destroy everything he was carrying in person. Although this cylinder was filled with oxygen, it was made particularly in a way that if someone poked a hole in it, it will blow like a bomb. It was also a safety measure to not fall into the enemy's hands and destroy anything important. Albeit he was unwilling to die in this place, Jacob had clearly stated he won't let him off, and the information Jacob was asking was the top secret of his clan which he can't tell anyone. So, he decided to use his last resort and blow himself while gravely injuring Jacob in the process, and he knew the moment he blew himself his clansmen would be alerted, and they might be able to avenge him by killing Jacob, who would be wounded at that time. Most importantly, he didn't want to experience torture or humiliation before his death. However, it was only possible if he could outmatch Jacob's reaction speed. Jacob had long closed the distance, and he knew this guy won't go down easily. So the moment he saw him moving, the magnum revolver appeared in his hand again, and he pulled the trigger. Bang! Glee Gnome's hand was only a few centimeters away from the cylinder suddenly flashed back when the bullet landed right on his wrist, and the dagger also fell. Ah! Bastard, I'll kill you. You can't escape once they know you killed me. Ha ha ha. He screamed and cursed while hysterically laughing. He lost all his reason when he looked at his half-blown wrist, and the bullet even pierced deep into his rib cage. Furthermore, he knew he can't be saved anymore. However, Jacob would not let that happen. He took out his sword, and without any word, he directly stabbed into the bullet wound. Ah! The Glee Gnome screamed madly when the blade entered his body. Jacob's eyes were exempt from any emotions as he finally uncloaked the Glee Gnome's face. He had a long pointy nose and a small square face with pointy teeth and brown skin. His brown eyes were completely bloodshot as he looked at Jacob with hatred and abhorrence. He never hated someone so much in his life. He never thought he was going to be killed by someone from an inferior race in the uncommon region, which was supposed to be their playground and chance for his rise. Jacob suddenly pulled an icy smile. You look like an asshole, I know. Well now, tell me, where is your facility? You don't want your last moments to be worse than death, right? As he said those words, he slightly twisted the hilt. Wah! Gee, go to hell, ahaha. His laugh turned shrill when Jacob twisted the blade even more. Come on, it'll be over quickly. Why are you making it hard for yourself? Jacob's voice was filled with indifference as he said those words. He just couldn't feel pity or any remorse for this guy as he watched him scream. Unknowingly, he started to see everyone else as livestock, and as a butcher, he won't feel anything for the livestock. Fuck. Jacob pierced even deeper, but he had to admit this guy was really tough, and he knew Jacob can't anything as he will eventually die within a few minutes. He had already lost so much blood. Jacob's eyes suddenly narrowed when he observed a faint glow under the cloak. It was already dark, so this faint glow won't go unnoticed. He removed the cloak, and he saw a small device that was showing a red and pointed toward a specific location. Jacob instantly remembered the tracking device and the tracker he got from the tiger ball. It seemed I don't need you at all. Let me guess, you wanted to blow yourself because of the tracking marker in your body and also this device which shows you the location of your other associates. I'll get the information about the rare region out of them. Let's hope they're as tough as you, or it would be quite boring. Jacob chuckled darkly as he liked the Glean Gnome's shocked expression, filled with despair. Bast! Before he could curse, Jacob's hand suddenly moved vertically, and the Glean Gnome's entire body was separated in half by the sharp blade. Humph! Jacob merely sneered and took his heart box, and filled it with blood, and then took the Glean Gnome's heart. But he didn't leave the corpse laying. He buried it close to the water source and cleaned the scene. Since there was a rare rank race here, and this guy might be one of their geniuses, he can't leave his traces behind, which might be led to him. He has no idea what kind of strange abilities these races might possess. That's why, until he got rid of them completely, it was best to remain vigilant. As for what they were doing in the humane kingdom so far away from the rare region, he was soon going to find out. From the Glean Gnome's corpse, Jacob also got the cylinder and mask, as well as the tracking device. There wasn't any currency or identity. However, what was most interesting was the black belt around the Glean Gnome's waist. He saw the plain black buckle was now cracked, and after he completely peeled the surface, he saw a charred interior with a complex structure. That barrier was probably embedded in this buckle, and it was destroyed when I used the Titan sniper. It's a pity I won't be able to study it. Well, I might get more of these in their hideout. Jacob's lips curled. He arranged the oxygen cylinder around his wrist like the Glean Gnome, and it was still half full since he didn't know where those smoke traps were. This cylinder will be his lifesaver. Who knows just how many traps those bastards are hiding around their hideout. He looked at the pointer in the device and started to move toward it very carefully. Furthermore, the Glean Gnome tracking device was now on him. He didn't store it inside his pendant since it would connect its connection. He didn't want to alert the enemy by doing it. If anyone was monitoring these trackers, they would only think that the Glean Gnome was still alive and coming back to their hideout. Just as Jacob was a mile away from the trap, he saw a blue dot appearing in the device a few meters away. His eyes contracted. Can this device also tell where the traps are hidden? Jacob was elated. He carefully walked right where this blue dot was, and when he carefully removed the soil, something hard appeared, and he carefully cleared the soil. A landmine. Jacob was astonished when he saw the blue landmine. So, that's the secret behind their so-called smoke traps is, huh? This mine should be connected with that tree somehow. Jacob dug around it and finally noticed a string heading in the same way where he came from. Since that guy was so confident about this trap and its range is so large, it might come in handy. Jacob quickly got to work. Deactivating a landmine was a piece of cake for him since there weren't any anti-touch sensors. After a few minutes, he finally deactivated it and stored it in his pendant without hesitation. He wanted to disassemble it and see what was the true source of that smoke. But now wasn't the time. He again started to follow the direction, and on his way, he acquired 5 more landmines, but they were white, not like the previous blue one. By following the pointer, Jacob didn't know in which part he was, but he was still in the lion forest, and he had to admit those guys really knew how to hide their tracks. Without this device, even those green gnomes might not find the hideout. After walking for over an hour, the end of the line finally appeared. Jacob looked at where the point was and saw it was a small muddy puddle surrounded by trees. Chapter 94: A Surprise. Jacob looked at the tracking device in his hand and frowned slightly because he could see the trees surrounding the small muddy puddle were blinking in blue dots, and they were 8 for them. Sensors or bombs or monitoring devices. Jacob didn't approach the location since it would be too risky if he got exposed. He still didn't know just how many green gnomes were there, or if they had any help from the rare region. He also had no idea what kind of facility they had. Even Decker was hiding deadly traps in his small hideout, much less these guys who seemed to be here for some time, and they had all kinds of traps in this forest. Since this device is showing the locations and trap, I wonder if it had other functions. Jacob looked at the tracking device, which was 6x4, and there wasn't any loge, and it looked like a completely back smartphone. However, it only had one button to turn it off or on. Jacob had already disassembled the tracking device he got from the hob trolls, and it had a very simple radio wave mechanism, and this didn't seem any different. Besides, it can also show traps or something in those traps. As for their energy source, there were small solar panels installed on their back that can recharge them. As for the small gemstone, which was also the tracker, it was still a mystery for him because there wasn't any opening in it, nor did he dare to, afraid of breaking it. He didn't have the luxury to experiment with only one device in his possession. But he was fascinated when he found out that this gemstone tracker got activated once it felt the heat of the skin, just like the parasite gem and its controller. Although he didn't know how these gems were made, he was sure they were quite high-tech and probably a very expensive commodity, even in the rare region. The devices, on the other hand, were quite easy to make as long as they had the frequency of a tracker gem. Nevertheless, Jacob didn't want to dive deep into this because being curious about these things in the uncommon region was simply wasting his brain cells and time. So, he temporarily gave up on researching these gems after having a vague idea about their operative systems. However, this also proved he still had many things to learn, and just because he had some knowledge and breakthrough in his previous life, this doesn't mean he was the #1 genius in this world. Arrogance and ignorance will only get him so far, and he learned his lesson on the day when he accepted cursed immortality. But today he also learned if he stayed in shallow waters for much longer, he got used to it, and when he entered the sea, it will swallow him. He had to learn to survive in the sea, and only then he'll learn the way of the sea. But it also doesn't mean he'll be going to announce his arrival to those monsters hidden deep within. Jacob looked at the tracking device and then at those trees. Although he didn't know for sure what traps were there, he wasn't in a hurry to find out. It was already deep at night, and he was already at his destination. Once that green gnome didn't return to the base within a specific time, they might come out to look for him. From his arrogant tone, he sounded extremely confident, and Jacob counted on it. He'll slowly chip away their numbers before they made some mistakes. After deciding to this point, Jacob closed the tracking device and put it in his pocket, since he didn't want to cut off the connection completely. On the contrary, he was going to use it to his own advantage. Since they can track this device, I can control their movements and lead them into traps. I can't use the Titan sniper unless it was necessary. Albeit the Titan sniper was powerful, its voice was loud despite Jacob's effort to suppress it as much as he could. But he needed some unique tools that the workshop in the Gunsmith Guild in the Lionheart City didn't have to completely suppress that thunderous voice. Lastly, the bullets were quite precious, and it still didn't have a matching scope that can bring out the gun's true potential. Jacob left the area to start working on his plan to capture those green gnomes alive, or anyone who lived in that lab. He dug a deep pit and then hid it before throwing the tracker he found in the green gnome's body. While he hid in the crown of a tree not far away from his trap. Time passed, and the entire night ended as the dawn started to break. Jacob still didn't detect any movement. But he kept waiting patiently. However, when the entire day passed without any movement, he wondered if this device had led him to some hoax hideout and if he was just wasting his time. But he still didn't move and decided to wait for another 2 days. And if he still didn't detect any movement, he'll leave and return to the Lionheart City before he began his travels toward the rare region. Although, this hideout of green gnomes might give him some information about the rare region. He wasn't enough desperate to waste his time while he can extract another Tier 6 heart essence. Besides, he won't get any more heart essence even if he hunted more green gnomes. It simply wasn't worth so much time. Now, it depends on their luck if they didn't appear. Today was the 3rd night since Jacob was lying in wait when he suddenly felt a mild tremor on the ground. Jacob was instantly alerted because it was just too sudden, and followed by this tremor, a ghastly roar reverberated in the area. Roar! Jacob's expression changed because this roar rang from the same direction as the hideout location. This voice is even more intimidating than that bull. Just what were they doing here, exactly? Jacob was curious, and he was about to go to take a look when, "I think they're here. Let's go before someone else come here. We can't miss this chance." Jacob heard a familiar voice a couple of meters from his hiding position on the west side, and he could also hear the rustling sound of many footsteps rushing toward the hideout direction. It seemed I won't have to test the waters myself. Jacob's lips suddenly curled into a wintry smile when he thought about who it was and crept behind that group. Soon, they reached the location of the small muddy puddle. However, Jacob was astonished when he saw the puddle wasn't there anymore and a 10-meter wide hole has appeared in its place. Furthermore, when Jacob's eyes shifted toward an over 6-meter tall silhouette, his expression turned stern. "Captain, it seemed you were right about the goblin facility being in the lion forest, and if we manage to capture it, we'll be famous not to talk about rich." A man's elated voice rang. Jacob finally glanced at the group. They were 10 people wearing many gears and mercenary armor, with a variety of firearms and cold weapons. "Don't jump to conclusion. That thing that crawled out from that hole is probably a B rank, and it might have killed all the goblins in the facility when it managed to escape. We don't need to kill this thing, just drive it away toward the closest town, while we'll collect the research records in that facility. That's what holds the true value." Jacob was very familiar with this voice. It was none other than Rosalia, who he rejected the invitation from before leaving the Rain Town. He didn't think she was inviting him to raid the Green Gnome's hideout, and it seemed she was under the false impression that this facility was established by the Green Goblins, or she simply didn't want to reveal the truth despite knowing how dangerous this raid mission could be. That's why she was recruiting mercenaries in the towns, so they could be her cannon folds. But I probably cleaned the traps for them. That's why they appeared here with no scratch. Now she wanted those cannon folds to lure that thing away from the facility toward a town, so even if those cannon folds died, those people will take their places while she plunders the hideout. How ruthless. Jacob couldn't help but slightly admired Rosalia's scheming and decision-making abilities. Suddenly, everyone heard a husky voice filled with indifference ring in the vicinity. "At least I don't have to worry about the food for my pet. Go feed to your heart content." Just as this voice trailed off, 2 red, glowing eyes snapped open and turned toward Rosalia's group. Even Jacob, who was still 50 meters away, felt his heart palpitated when he felt murderous air filling the surroundings when those red beastly eyes opened. Powerful. This was the only word that came to his mind. Chapter 95, A Mutant. Someone can control this thing. We need to get rid of this anomaly. Prepare your weapons. We're using Plane C. Rosalia commanded with a hint of shock. She didn't know someone can control that beast, which extinguished her hope of distracting it. Now she had to find the person who was controlling that beast and get rid of him before things get out of hand. Roar. This deafening roar made them look toward the beast again. Because of the night, they didn't see the true appearance of the beast and thought it was just some captured beast. However, as that so-called beast come closer to the range of their torches, they finally had a clear look and their heart trembled when they saw the beast. It was a humanoid brown monster with slimy liquid gushing out from its body. Its mouth was filled with sharp fangs and its red eyes were filled with killing intent. "What the fuck is this thing?" a burly man yelled in horror. Rosalia also found this unbelievable when she saw the appearance of that thing. This was their first time seeing such an abomination, and it looked nothing like some beast. Some of the mercenaries opened fire in fear, but to their horror, those bullets simply bounce off that thing. "Captain, this is not how we plan. Even the rifle bullets have no effect on it," a woman shouted with an aghast expression. "She lied to me. This is not a goblin facility we can raid." Rosalia's heart palpitated with fear and hatred in her eyes. She never thought she would get tricked into coming here, or it was also a possibility that her partner didn't know about this either. Nevertheless, it wasn't time to mull over it, because the monster's speed suddenly increased as it ran toward the burly man with its mouth wide open. She shouted, "Retreat, this mission is over, save yourself." She directly dashed toward the woods. Everyone looked at fleeing Rosalia with a hint of bewilderment and resentment. But they knew every mercenary was like this, and once they sense real danger, they would also save their own skin first. So, Rosalia fleeing action wasn't out of their expectation. There wasn't any fighting chance against that monster, since they can't even phase it with bullets. They all fled in different directions, while the burly man had the aggro of that monster. "Bunch of backstabbers." His voice was filled with hatred, as if he had done nothing like this before, or he won't do the same if he was in their shoes. Furthermore, the brown monster's speed was increasing at an alarming rate, and despite being a C-rank mercenary, he was losing ground quickly. "Heh, running won't help." The same husky voice rang in the vicinity, filled with disdain. Jacob also saw the monster and couldn't summon cursed immortality instantly. "What is that thing?" he quickly asked while his eyes were fixed on the monster, as it seemed to grow stronger with every second. Furthermore, the hole was now unguarded since that monster was busy chasing those mercenaries. Immortica wrote teasingly, "It seemed your luck is not bad." Jacob frowned. "What do you mean? I don't have time to play riddle with you." That thing is actually a man-made mutant after they combined genes of two species so they could achieve evolution. However, do you think those bunch of pig brains can achieve something like this and break the limit on their bloodline so easily? They're simply playing God, and they're terrible at that as well. Nevertheless, since that mutant is a mixture of two species, it meant it's a new species entirely. Currently, its rank is Tier 7, and if he ate enough living beings, he can evolve into Tier 8. But that's its limit since it was born after mixing the Tier 2 genes into Tier 5 genes. That's why I said it was your chance. If you can let it evolve into Tier 8 and then kill it and acquire its heart, you'll probably 10% increase in the cursed mark. Most importantly, you failed to awake any ability on your 10% completion last time. But with that mutant heart, your chance of awakening an ability will also be higher since your heart is also mutant. Jacob's eyes suddenly lit up when he read the last details. He had already heard about the ability from Immortica, but he never managed to awaken it. Now he was hearing it again, and it seemed his chances were quite high. He suddenly looked at the monster, who had already gobbled up that burly mercenary whole despite his struggle, and quickly dashed toward the other direction where another mercenary had escaped. "That monster has already entered the rank of rarer species. If I let it grow to Tier 8, I'm afraid I would lose the ability to hunt it down altogether." "What if I killed it now?" Jacob asked. "That mutant is still an infant. If you kill it now, you'll only get the normal benefits of swallowing a Tier 7 species. A mutant like this only benefits you if it matured completely. Why don't you let it eat all those humans who are at the peak of Tier 3 and then fed it that fellow hiding in that hole? It's a Tier 5 hob troll who had broken the limit of its bloodline 2 times, Immortica suggested. Jacob's interest was suddenly piqued. Hob troll? What do you mean, broke the limit 2 times? He knew hob trolls were a Tier 3 species like humans, and this hob troll was a Tier 5. Immortica also mentions how that mutant came into being. It was also because someone tried to break the limit. Didn't I already explain that there are some species that can evolve in tiers despite the lower tiers they were born with? This is called the limit break, and the more limit a species breaks, the stronger it is from the other natural species of the same rank. Simply put, a B rank human is someone who had broken the limit of their bloodline, and a rank is the same case. The species with intelligence can break their limits and evolve into higher tier species as long as they knew which is the right path for them. This is a higher concept you'll come in contact with once you meet the species above tier 12. You'll know just how insignificant you truly are. Ha 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 ha. Jacob felt slight fear, but there was a hint of expectation in his eyes when he thought just how deep this entire concept was, and he wasn't even qualified to be a frog in the well yet. However, just as Immortality said, this wasn't the time to know about these things, and he should be grateful that the usually annoying book revealed this much to him without wasting his time in talking circles. Well, let's see how strong a hob troll who had broken this so-called bloodline limit is. Jacob's lips curled into a wintry smile. He had already killed hob trolls without using his strength before. Furthermore, this hob troll seemed to be in control of that mutant. If he could gain that control, he can easily kill that mutant after letting it evolve into tier 8. Is there more species in that hole? He asked. Only one. It seemed that Hob Troll had already fed everyone inside to that mutant to help it acquire this much strength. I wonder who will win between you two. Jacob's eyes narrowed. Do you mean that Hob Troll is as strong as me? He knew just how strong he was, and there was hardly anyone who could give him a fight in the uncommon region. I can't answer this question. I have already gotten my answer with your creepy laugh. Jacob sneered and closed the book. If things come to shove, I'll just use the Titan sniper, Jacob sneered. Before he take any further action, he take out something from his pendant. It was a faceless dark mask made with Titan iron. He had saved it for such occasions. He put on the mask, and it fit his face perfectly. Then he suddenly unfolded his collar, and it turned into a long hood. He covered his head with the hood on his jacket, completely hiding his silver hair. Now only his amber eyes were visible. He slowly crept toward the dark hole. If that mutant didn't have any allure to him, he would never take such a risk, and if he wanted to hunt that thing after it mature, he had to get rid of this hidden threat first. Jacob looked down the hole, and it was 20 meters deep and there was a dim light. It seemed you managed to escape my pet's detection. Interesting. Jacob suddenly turned around and finally noticed the voice source. It was coming from a tree. He understood those blue dots he saw in that device were monitoring devices, and that guy was still in the hideout, monitoring everyone like he was watching a show. Jacob suddenly pulled a stiff smile under his mask as he sneered. How about you come out of this small hole of yours and we have a chat? It's meaningless. You're dead whether you meet me or not. The voice was filled with indifference and disdain, as if Jacob wasn't worth his attention. Jacob suddenly put a hand in his inner pocket and pulled out a blue landmine. He waved the landmine on the tree and coolly said, I wonder if I threw this in this hole, will you crawl out or not? Chapter 96 Bluffing. Jacob suddenly put a hand in his inner pocket and pulled out a blue landmine. He waved the landmine on the tree and coolly said, I wonder if throw this in this hole, will you crawl out or not? It seemed you have some skills to even acquire that intermediate smoke mine without blowing yourself up. But are you sure you wanted to meet me? The voice still sounded indifferent. Jacob, however, didn't buy that calm act and sneered. If you wanted to buy time for your pet to come here, I promise I'll throw it inside before I leave. What do you think will happen then? Truth be told, Jacob didn't want to waste this smoke mine, since it was probably the Glean Gnome's trump card to get rid of a powerful opponent like him. That's why he was threatening, and he also wanted to see just how much this mine can scare this hob troll who was as strong as him. Since you wish for death, I'll grant your wish. The husky voice was icy cold, but there was a hint of anger in his voice this time. Jacob's lip curled. He didn't want to go inside the hideout where this hob troll had an absolute advantage, since he knew where the traps were set and how to activate them. Fighting outside was the best option, and he now had some idea just how scary this mine was, so he quickly put it away and took out 2 white smoke mines, and without any hesitation, he threw them inside with a wintry smile. If you think I'll let you walk out without any consequences, then you are a moron, Jacob sneered before he quickly dashed toward the tree. He never said he will fight fairly. Besides, if that mutant came back, he might not handle two of them together, and then he had to kill the mutant as well. That'd be a great waste. Furthermore, the ladder seemed to be destroyed by the mutant when it crawled upward. He wanted to see how that hob troll will climb up with that annoying smoke. Jacob quickly pulled out his Titan sniper, and after connecting it, he aimed it toward the hole. The moment that hob troll appeared, he will not hesitate to shoot him. However, smoke suddenly started rising, covering the entire hole. Jacob frowned, but he didn't move from his position while staring at the smoke. He was also alert for any movement of that mutant. When a minute passed, Jacob suddenly noticed someone flying out the hole, and when he had a closer look, his expression changed. A stick grenade? Without any delay, he quickly took cover. He never thought this opponent was this resourceful, and this also take away his chance of killing that guy in one shot. With a booming sound, the smoke and dust cover the area. Jacob quickly attached the sniper to his back before he drew one short sword in one hand while a black shotgun appeared in another hand. It was the shotgun he had made himself, and it was far more powerful than those low-quality shotguns he acquired. Jacob suddenly heard quick footsteps coming his way. He knew I'm here. Without any hesitation, he shot in that direction. Boom. You're not just talking, huh? But if you think these bullets can touch me, and this is where your confidence came from, then you're already dead. The hob troll sneered. Jacob heard something flying right toward him. This bastard. He knew this was another stick grenade and quickly dashed toward another tree. Boom. The tree was blown into debris. Since you wanted to play, let's play. Jacob's voice was icy cold, and without any hesitation, he dashed toward the hob troll while putting the shotgun away, and he drew his second short sword. You're not afraid of death, aren't you? The hob troll clearly heard Jacob coming, and he seemed to want just that. Jacob saw a tall figure wrapped in a dark cloak at this moment. But his focus turned on the long 2-meter-long black spear in this figure's hand, especially the dark spear blade. It was 5 feet long and extremely sharp. Titan iron. Jacob instantly identified the blade, since he had worked with the Titan iron, and his blade was the same. However, that spear was made with extremely high craftsmanship while his swords were made by Isaac, who was only a blacksmith in a small town. The cloaked hob troll also seemed to spot the two-short sword in Jacob's hands. Who are you? His voice was stern with a hint of shock. He knew the Titan iron wasn't something just anyone could gain. Your death, Jacob smirked before he slashed his left sword toward the hob troll's hand. Humph, big words. The hob troll's voice was mixed with rage. He swung his long spear vertically without giving Jacob's short sword any chance of approaching him. However, when both blades clashed, sparks appeared, and when the hob troll thought Jacob would be sent flying, but on the contrary, he felt a tremendous force behind that strike. A rank. How is that possible? He's not human. The hob troll was shocked this time because he was a hidden rank expert and didn't achieve it by himself as well. That's why he knew better than another just how powerful an A-rank expert was, and how difficult to enter this rank was for races in the uncommon region. Before, he thought this masked man was from humans, but he knew humans didn't have any A-rank expert, nor had they had such support to help them reach this rank. That's why he quickly assumed Jacob from the rare region, and he was probably hired by the Glean Gnomes to protect their people in secret. His absolute confidence in winning this fight also crumbled when this realization struck him. Jacob was also slightly shocked when he felt his opponent wasn't weaker than him at all. It was his first time clashing with someone who could take his full force attack and remain standing. They both moved back a few feet after their first clash. The hob troll coldly asked, "Who are you, and why are you getting in my way? Do you know the consequence of hindering the business of Killer Skull Society?" Before the hob troll wanted to kill Jacob, but now that he has a taste of Jacob's strength, he knew winning against Jacob would exhaust his most trump cards, which he didn't want. Furthermore, the mutant was still hunting those mercenaries, and Jacob didn't give him any chance to summon it back when he threw those smoke mines inside. That's why he stated the name of the organization behind him, because in his mind Jacob was from the rare region, and in the rare region very few powers provoke the Killer Skull Society, because everyone knows the members of Killer Skull Society were all suicidal lunatics. Not even an A-rank mercenary would clash with Killer Skull Society alone, or he had to look over his shoulder all the time. A sudden realization dawned on Jacob. He couldn't help but sneer. "So, you are one of the clowns of that clown society. I was just wondering where I had seen this kind of dressing before. You dare to spout nonsense about my society? Do you dare to reveal your background?" The hob troll was furious when he heard Jacob's belittling tone. But he was secretly more vigilant about Jacob's background now. Jacob sneered. "I'm the protector of the Zodiac Taurus Bank in the Uncommon region, and I don't want your clown society hindering our business, so give me the control of that thing and scram." Jacob also didn't want to get in the fight with this hob troll now. First, he wasn't confident in stopping him, and second, he still didn't know all of his hidden trump cards. So it wasn't worth fighting him as long as he can trick him into submission and make him give up the mutant. That was why he simply bluffed about being the protector of the Zodiac Taurus Bank. Although he had no proof, his strength was enough proof, and his opponent would also think this way. Protector of Zodiac Taurus Bank. The hob troll was shocked. The bigwigs of the three hegemonies weren't something even the Killer Skull Society provoked. However, the hob troll was completely unwilling because they had exhausted vast resources to make that mutant, and even tricked a race of the rare region. That mutant was a crucial part of their plan. How could he hand it over so easily? "If your excellency is willing to back down, I'll compensate you with 10 million gold coins and won't cause much trouble in the humane kingdom." The hob troll tone wasn't arrogant anymore, as he didn't want to fight Jacob to death. Jacob couldn't help but smile coldly and shook his head. "I want that thing. You can do whatever you want as long as you stay away from my business. Or I can issue an order to every mercenary branch in the Uncommon region to hunt every single member of your clown society." Chapter 97: The Might of Titan Sniper. The hob troll's voice turned extremely icy. "Are you really want to do this over a failed product?" He really couldn't understand why Jacob was after that mutant, since it had no value except it was a killing machine that didn't feel pain or remorse while killing. If Jacob weren't an A rank, he might risk killing Jacob and completing the mission before vanishing from the Uncommon region. Even if the Zodiac Taurus Bank sent someone to seek revenge, he and the members of the Killer Skull Society would be long gone in hiding. The Killer Skull Society was extremely secretive, and no one knows how it operates or where its hideouts were. That's why no one could get rid of it, despite being hated by almost everyone. However, Jacob's appearance had caught him off guard, since they didn't know someone like him even exist in the Uncommon region despite their information network. If Jacob really can move the mercenary of the entire Uncommon region, even the ones in the Earthen Kingdom, which was their base of operation, it would hinder whatever they were doing in the Uncommon region, which was far more important than a mutant. Now he had only two choices: do as Jacob said and report this to the higher-ups, or he can risk everything which would put his life in danger, and if Jacob had some trump cards, he might even die or lose a limb or two. Jacob sneered. "Why don't you try?" He could sense the opponent was almost in his hand. Roar. Suddenly, the mutant's roar rang from a few hundred meters in the distance. "That thing is coming back." Jacob's expression turned somewhat dark. The hob troll suddenly dashed toward Jacob while he thrust his spear toward his chest. "As long as I can keep you here, who will know what happened?" The hob troll's voice was filled with killing intent. He finally made his choice. This mutant was just too important for their real purpose in the Uncommon region. Now that it was coming back, if he could use its strength, Jacob would be dead, and before anyone knows what happened to Jacob, he would be long gone. Jacob knew things were going south, and he only had a minute or two before that mutant will reach here. He had to kill this guy and get hold of the control of that mutant. He used the sword in his left hand like a shield and slashed the other on the hob troll's wrist. The hob troll's reaction wasn't slow, either. He slid his hand down and Jacob's sword met with the spear shaft, creating sparks. Jacob, on the other hand, was forced back because of the spear's impact on his chest. He's delaying. Jacob quickly saw through that hob troll's scheme. With that spear length, he could easily keep Jacob away from himself as long as he didn't make any mistakes. Their reflexes were equally matched, which also made it impossible for them to kill each other quickly. While the hob troll also had a psychological advantage in the form of the mutant. He knew Jacob would be desperate because of the mutant, and he just had to wait before he found an opening in Jacob's defense. As long as he wounded Jacob gravely, he would use his trump card to make sure Jacob won't leave this place alive. However, he underestimated Jacob when he thought Jacob would use just swords to play his game. Jacob unexpectedly threw his sword at him like an arrow, before he detached the sniper from his back and take aim. The hob troll didn't expect Jacob would abandon his weapon for that long gun attached to his back. He wasn't afraid of bullets because in his view guns were not effective against a rank expert, and even if those bullets touched them, they would only leave small wounds. The skin of A-rank mercenary was as tough as rock, so there were very few guns that could actually hurt them, and they were almost impossible to acquire since those stingy gunsmiths won't sell them easily. So, he only focused on blocking the incoming sword. Even if that bullet hit him, it would only leave a scratch since he was also wearing armor and that cloak was also made with a beast hide and he also had an extra hidden layer of protection. Jacob's lips curled upward, and he pulled the trigger. Boom! The Titan bullet, despite being shot after the sword, reached its target first. The hob troll's heart palpitated when he heard that deafening gunshot. He was caught off guard, and he didn't even see the shadow of that bullet as it directly landed just below his neck. That impact was far more powerful than the impact he received from Jacob's strike, and he was sent flying like a rag doll. Furthermore, the bullet was so fast that the shield barrier activated after the bullet successfully pierced through his cloak and armor and struck between his lungs. However, because of those two shield protections, he was still alive, or that bullet could have completely poked a huge hole in his chest. But this didn't mean he was fine. His windpipe was also pressed by that bullet now, and his breath became ragged while the piercing pain assaulted him. He finally understood Jacob's throwing his sword was just a decoy, and his real trump card was this bullet, and he was now completely horrified of that gun despite the surrounding barrier. This wound was not something he could ignore and continue to fight. Just as he was still in shock. Click! The sound of reloading rang in his ears. Despite the surrounding barrier, he didn't feel safe anymore and wasn't confident like before. I have to escape and report this to higher up. He quickly abandoned any thought of struggle, and with extreme difficulty, he suddenly slapped his leg. Jacob was about to shoot another bullet when dark blue smoke suddenly rose from the ground at an alarming rate. Humph, paltry tricks. Jacob completely ignored that smoke, since it still wasn't fast enough to cover that wounded hob troll. He pulled the trigger. The hob troll was frightening now. He even pulled the spear between his head and neck. He knew as long as he can avoid damage to these parts, he can escape, and Jacob would probably aim at this area. His gamble paid off. Jacob wanted to end it and took a headshot. Although the bullet breaks the barrier, the Titan iron spearhead only bends but does not pierce or broke by the bullet impact. But it was enough to make a deep wound on the hob troll's head. Fuck. Jacob cursed when he saw that blade safe that hob troll. He again reloaded, but this time the smoke already reached his face, and the hob troll had vanished. But he still took the shot. He was too close to killing that hob troll. Boom. The bullet literally created a hole in the smoke with its speed, and when Jacob saw the bullet land on the ground, there wasn't any track of that hob troll except his blood. He knew that bastard had escaped. Shit. Jacob was exasperated. This smoke was just too thick. And when noticed the burning sensation on his skin, his expression darkened even more. Is this the blue landmine? He was alarmed when he thought about it, and his skin suddenly started charred. He quickly pulled the hood over his eyes and dashed toward the hole not far away. Likewise, he knew this smoke was too deadly even for him, and that the underground hideout was his chance to escape it. Furthermore, he didn't want to try and outrun this smoke since he had no idea just how much range it had. And that hob troll might be in that hideout as well. That guy was gravely wounded by him, and it won't be easily run in this blue acidic smoke. He wanted to finish that guy off since this might also kill the approaching mutant as well. It took away his chance to acquire a Tier 8 mutant heart, and the benefits came with it. When he jumped inside the hole, the white smoke was still there, but because of Tiger Bull's hide, it didn't affect Jacob much. And he also covered his hands and face. So, he was fine for now. Jacob tried to look around. He saw a pathway that led to the other side, which was lit in dim light. He slowly walked with silent feet, while his sniper was aimed in front and the sword in his other hand. At the end of the hallway, Jacob saw something very familiar. There was a glass cell like in the Decker's lab, but it was completely broken. Did they make that mutant here? Jacob guessed as he noticed the blue liquid on the floor, mixed with blood and gore, with some body parts of humans. It was a horrendous sight. There was some scattered medical equipment and a broken stretcher. But Jacob's attention was drawn to the opening of the west corner of this place, which was glowing in faint light. Chapter 98: Hunting the Mutant. Jacob slowly moved toward that opening. When he was in front of that opening, he saw a huge monitor which was showing the entire lion forest with a glowing red. There was a map on the wall. A monitoring room. Is that the mutant? Jacob's eyes narrowed when he looked at the red, which was now moving away from this area at an incredible speed. After making sure that Hob Troll wasn't hiding anywhere, he relaxed a bit and started to search through the monitor room. He also pocketed that unfamiliar map. Jacob just looked behind the wide monitor screen when his expression changed because there was a timer that continued counting down, and there were only 15 seconds left until it reached 0. That hateful prick. Jacob couldn't help but cursed out loud, and without waiting to see what that timer was about, he took a last glance at the monitor and ran toward the exit at full speed. The dark blue smoke was already starting to enter the hideout, but Jacob didn't care about that. He quickly jumped around the wall like a monkey and exited the hideout into the thick blue smoke. He quickly hid his skin and ran in the east direction without stopping. Thereupon, a booming sound rang in the vicinity, and a tremor passed through the ground. Jacob's eyes were deadly cold. Don't let me catch you. He knew that Hob Troll was behind the activation of that timer, so he could destroy everything in that hideout if things goes awry, and he succeeded. Jacob knew there was something that Hob Troll didn't want anyone to see, and the mutant control might be in that place as well. Now everything was gone, while that mutant might die in this smoke. He also lost one of his short swords he threw at the Hob Troll and wasted Titan bullets. However, Jacob suddenly noticed the resistance of that thick smoke was getting lighter. He couldn't help but peek slightly, and the blue smoke was getting lighter and lighter with every second. But what was different about this was, he wasn't getting out of the range of the smoke, but it was now moving in a west direction at an extremely alarming rate, like some vacuum was sucking it. Now what? Jacob was astonished because that direction was the exact direction where the mutant fled in. Jacob frowned slightly. It was his chance to get out of here, but he was curious about why this smoke was going in that direction. Here goes nothing. If this was that Hob Troll, I'll get rid of that prick for good, and acquire that mutant heart while at it. He thought and followed that smoke from a safe distance while his Titan sniper was in his hand. After following the smoke for over 800 meters, Jacob finally saw the source, and he was shocked. He saw a gigantic shadow in the center of the blue smoke, and all the smoke was vanishing into this shadow. But the most shocking thing was that the shadow was growing larger as the blue smoke got absorbed by it. That mutant is absorbing this smoke. Jacob had seen the mutant, and that shadow looked exactly like it, and it was already 6 meters tall now. Fuck, I can't summon Immortality anymore. Is it evolving somehow with this smoke's help? Jacob could only guess now since he had no idea how this evolution worked. But he could feel that the mutant was growing stronger at an alarming rate. This might be my chance. Jacob's heart raced when he thought about how this disaster turned into an opportunity for him. He quickly hid within the crown of a tree that was now filled with withered leaves and waited for that mutant to absorb the smoke completely. On the south of the lion forest, a figure surrounded by a red transparent barrier was running while drops of blood kept falling from his cloak. He halted when he felt the blue smoke was gone. Without delay, He skewered his fingers into the bloody hole in his chest and groaned as he gritted his teeth. Soon he slid his fingers out, and a 16mm black bullet head could be seen between his fingers. He growled in hatred while clenching the bullet head. "I'll remember this." He then takes out a small metal flask and gulped a green liquid down completely. "How did I exit the area of the intermediate smoke mine so quickly?" The hob troll was confused, but when he thought about Jacob and the gun that could even break past the shield barrier, he didn't want to stay here to find out the reason behind it. He then glanced around before he began to move again. His speed was much faster than before. "I never thought the mission would fail in the humane kingdom without it even begun. I have to report it to the higher-ups. It seems someone is paying attention to the uncommon region, and the letter disappearance might also have something to do with it. It's good that I have already connected the self-destruction trigger with this intermediate mine. Now no one will get anything out of that place. We had to lie low for the time being. As for that protector, I look forward to our next meeting." His dark green eyes were filled with killing intent as he vanished into the dark forest. On the other side, Jacob had no idea the hob troll was completely clueless about what was happening with the mutant right now. The smoke was already gone, and the 7-meter-tall mutant appeared tens of meters away from him. Its color was now purple while its humanoid body was more muscular, and its long ugly face had characteristics of a glean gnome, except for its emotionless glowing red eyes, and the dreadful aura it was giving off. Howl! It suddenly let loose a reverberating howl, which made even Jacob feel pressure. "It has evolved." Jacob was sure of it as his face lit up. With a cold smile, he aimed directly toward its head and pulled the trigger. He didn't want to fight this thing and save some bullets. It simply wasn't worth it. Boom! The Titan bullet directly landed on its huge slimy head, and the impact made the huge mutant lose its balance, and it fell between trees. However, it wasn't dead. The bullet only penetrated its thick skin. With a deafening mad cry, it quickly ran on his limb between trees. Jacob's expression turned serious when he saw this. It seemed it wasn't just a mindless idiot anymore. It can tell the Titan bullet can threaten its life, so he's running. "But you're not getting away that easily." Jacob's lips curled before he chased the fleeing mutant while he changed the empty magazine with his spare one while storing the empty one away. He aimed while running and pulled the trigger. Another sonic boom rang, and the bullet landed on the mutant's shoulder, which made it cry in pain and rage. It twisted around and threw a punch toward the direction where that bullet had come from. But Jacob kept a 50-meter distance from it, and the mutant did not know how far he was, so the punch only blasted a tree. Although it was intelligent to tell the danger and fled for its life, it wasn't that intelligent to know how a gun works. Jacob sneered and again pulled the trigger while aiming right where the bleeding hole in its head was. Now it was in his view. Boom! Bullseye! Jacob smirked when the bullet landed on its mark. The mutant let loose a ghastly howl, this time as it clutched his head with its claws. The bullet had pierced through the skull and his brain, and if it was someone else, they would have been dead by now. Jacob knew it was only a matter of time before that mutant will die. So, he didn't waste more bullets and kept watching as the mutant's shrill screams become powerless. After 10 minutes of struggle, the mutant hands finally turned limp, and it started to fall on its head forward. Boom! Another bullet pierced the same head wound again, which also sent the mutant flying back. It was an insurance shot by Jacob just to make sure that thing died completely. After the mutant fell to the ground with a massive thud, Jacob still waited for 10 minutes before he finally came out of his cover. He crept toward the huge body of the mutant, which lay limp between the destroyed trees. He had to admit that this mutant was really like a cockroach. Jacob kicked the mutant a few times, and after he was completely sure that it was dead, he attached his sniper on his back again and took out his sword. He walked toward its chest and cut open its slimy chest. When he saw the 2 feet, large blue heart, he was astonished. Nevertheless, he took out the heart box, and the heart barely fit in it. He then had to use another box to fill it with blood. As for its meat, he would not eat it after watching it absorb that blue smoke. Without caring about what will happen next, He left toward the Lionheart City. It's time for him to leave the uncommon region. Chapter 99 Leaving. 10 hours after Jacob left the Lion Forest, a small regiment of soldiers appeared in the area where an enormous crater was located, and some soldiers were completely blocking the vicinity, closing it for civilians. A tall middle-aged man in leather clothes with a sword scabbard on his back was standing in front of the mutant body with another middle-aged man in a lavish outfit with long hair. Two beauties were standing beside this long-haired man. One of them wore a tight hunter outfit while the other was wearing white loose robes and a veil to cover her face, but her intelligent eyes were looking at the mutant with great interest. The long-haired middle-aged man suddenly spoke with indignation. You discovered this facility and didn't even bother to tell me about you? Are you rebelling, Rose? The tall heroic beauty was none other than Rosalia, or Rose, who managed to escape with her life last night because the mutant mysteriously decided to return. She didn't dare to stay here and directly found her father, the overseer of the city lord, Vil Lionheart, and told him everything. Vil was naturally shocked when he heard about that monster that couldn't be hurt with bullets and can eat C-rank mercenaries like carrots. Although he was furious at Rose for keeping it a secret from him, he had no time to scold her because he knew his arrogant and proud daughter won't seek him unless she can't handle anything herself. And if she can't handle something, this means it was really serious. So, he quickly contacted the vice leader Kite of the Star Mercenary Agency to come with him and investigate. Kite quickly agreed when he heard there was a facility in this place, which means huge profit if they get anything valuable. However, when they reached this place, not only the facility was destroyed by someone, but the monster was also slain. Truth be told, when Kite saw the mutant, even he felt his heart jump and thanked the person who killed it. Or this thing might really flatter the entire fief of the Lionheart family, his agency included. Rose pursed her lips and she said, I told you I was wrong. We have a more important matter to deal with. Can we talk about it after we found out who killed it and destroyed the facility? Rose had first-handedly experienced the might of this mutant, and she never felt so much despair in her life as she felt last night. Vil's expression turned livid. You dare to talk back? You are grounded for a year. He was really furious not because the facility was destroyed or Rose hid the truth, but because Rose nearly get herself killed because of some fame and wealth. He loved his daughter far more than anything, and Rose was the apple of his eyes as the eldest daughter and most talented of his children. But he had spoiled her so much, she now didn't even listen to him. That's why I was now regretting his way of raising her. Rose merely pouted but didn't retort anymore. She knew her dad meant well and cared about her and it was her fault, to begin with, so she remained silent this time. Vil finally looked at the veiled woman, who had a gorgeous figure even more seductive than Rose. He sighed and asked bitterly, Guildmaster, please forgive my manner. Did you discover what this thing is? This veil woman was none other than the Guildmaster of Apothecary Guild, Paula. Normally, Paula never bothered herself with anyone, as she was obsessed with her research. But today she approached Vil and requested to tag alone when she found out about the incident last night from her sources. Vil was more than happy to have her on board since she was an expert when it came to biological things like this. Paula said with uncertainty, First, it would be better if we don't touch it with our hands. Do you see the conditions of the trees and group beneath this monster? It is probably some poisonous substance. Second, whoever killed it. They killed it with an extremely powerful projectile weapon, like a gun, and then take its heart and left. Lastly, I want your men to send this carcass to the guild lab. I can only answer your other question after I examined it more thoroughly. Kite's eyes narrowed when he heard the second point. A weapon that could kill this thing. Just who was it? I never heard Gunsmith Guild inventing such weapons, or the agency will do anything to get their hands on it. I have to report it to the capital. If those gunsmiths were hiding such weapon, we have to force them in handing it over. Even the king might get involved to get such a weapon, and those gunsmiths won't be able to hide it once that happened. Despite he was shaken by this surreal event, his heart raced and a greedy glint flashed past his eyes when he thought of getting such a weapon. Vil and Rose had the same thought as Kite. Suddenly, a soldier approached them. My lord, We found this stab in a tree bark in the rubble. They looked at the dark, short sword, which was extremely sharp. Kite couldn't help but take it from the soldier and then slashed it on a tree. Everyone was astonished when the tree was cut like it was jelly. This, could it be the Titan iron? Vil had seen Titan iron once, and he heard just how deadly a weapon made with it can be. Furthermore, this sword was probably purely made with Titan iron, which was even more shocking. Just who were these people? Kite couldn't help but exclaim out loud. He turned around and said, "I want this sword. I hope the city lord won't have any problem with it. In return, I owe you 3 C-rank missions." He was also a sword user, and this sword was just too sharp, and he was planning to have it recast. He will be as strong as the agency leader with the new weapon. Vil saw through Kite's intentions, while Rose frowned because even she wanted that sword of Titan iron. "All right, I have no issue. This sword will only shine in the vice leader's hand, anyway." Vil agreed. In the end, 3 free C-rank missions were quite a good deal for him. But Rose wanted to fight for the sword. "You have no say in it." Vil glared at her and shut her down. Rose resentfully looked at Vil before storming away. Kite was quite content and chuckled. "She's just a child. Don't worry, she'll come around." Vil sighed bitterly. "I hope so." While the upper echelon was busy in the lion forest and curious about who was the killer of the gigantic monster, the man himself was busy in a close smithy room in the gunsmith guild. Jacob didn't sleep or rest after he returned and directly come to the gunsmith guild to make more Titan bullets and also service his Titan sniper. Lastly, he was making new Titan swords. Since he lost one, they weren't as sharp as the hob troll's spear. He decided to recast the old one and make a new one with it. This time, he made one side of the short swords into a full chisel and forged the swords into crescent blades. He used an ancient method to reforge these blades, which he learned in his old world. He also put metal bearings in the center of 2 hits, so he could rotate them on his fingers to confuse his opponent. Now, whoever was stabbed by these blades will know the true meaning of pain, and he was quite confident that Titan's spear will be chipped if it clashed with these 2 blades. After spending 20 hours in the guild, he left silently as he appeared before taking one last glance at the building. Then he returned to this house, and the first thing he did was to start the distillation process with the gnome heart and left to take a bath and pack his things. His only belonging was the Titan iron bricks. Expect them. All the things he needed were in his pendant, which was already packed. He also had to store his blood boxes in the big black bag with the bricks because he needed to store the bullets. The space was just too small. The whole Titan sniper can't fit if he didn't separate it into 2 small components. After he was done packing, he collected the gnome heart essence in injection and stored it away before he put the mutant heart for distillation. He wasn't planning to inject these heart essences here and do it in the wilderness where he could hunt the rare beasts. Jacob also studied the large map he got from the hideout, and it was surprisingly the map of entire rainy mountain ranges in the uncommon region, which was just the thing he needed the most. When the mutant crystal red heart essence was ready, he put it in a flask and stored it away, and packed the distillation equipment in another bag. Under the shade of night, Jacob left the Lionheart City without anyone noticing and started this trek toward the Rare Races region. Chapter 100 Dark City 1. Jacob entered the Rainy Mountain Ranges in 10 days since he chose the long route because the lion forest was lively when he passed the area. Although he knew why they were gathering there, he didn't care what they found or what they think about this whole incident. Since he was leaving for good, he had nothing to do with whatever they found. Even if they knew it was him and somehow found out about his identity, can they come looking for him in the rare region? The answer was obviously no. Even that hob troll didn't dare to cross the Rainy Mountain Ranges without a safe route and map. This place was just too large, and once you entered deep enough, there are tons of rare beasts roaming there freely in packs or colonies. That's why no one dared to cross this place recklessly, and those who tried never came back to tell the tale. Even rare species like Glean Gnome required a safe passage and assistance to cross this place in one piece. No, all the rare races were physically strong, and they all had their unique aspects. Besides, Very few rare species were willing to enter the uncommon region after risking their lives because there wasn't any worthy of their attention. Jacob found the marked passage on the map from the hideout, and, to his surprise, he seldom encountered any animals. He reckoned it was a safe passage. If he didn't have this map, it would take him far more effort to move. However, after crossing mountains and forests day after day, it took him 7 months to reach the end of this passage marked on the map. Jacob still didn't encounter any rare species, and he didn't go to look for them either. He now looked slim, just like when he exited the Decker's lab, but his eyes were filled with vigorous spirit. P-alpha D-alpha no one oh, he was even stronger than his bulky self 7 months ago and moved faster between these woods. Nevertheless, he still hasn't used the heart essences in his pendant because he was waiting for the right time. Today, Jacob's footsteps came to a halt because in front of him was a vast, active river that was 2 kilometers wide. Jacob looked at the lush forest and tall mountain on the other side of this river. So this is the border river which separates the 2 regions. As long as I cross this river, I'll step into the rare region. But this water current is too strong for me to swim on the other side with these bags. Jacob frowned slightly. Although this river was marked on the map, it didn't tell where this river start or where it end. Neither did he know if there was another, safer way to cross this river. Those gnomes weren't strong enough to cross this raging river on their own. So, Jacob didn't dare to take such a risk and try to see if he could find some kind of bridge or abandon boats. However, even after walking for a few miles, he saw nothing, and the pressure of the river flow didn't decrease either. Is there something I'm missing? Jacob again took out the map and looked carefully again. What is this black part? I think it was just a mountain, but I'm only a few miles away from this place and there are no mountains. Jacob frowned as his eyes shimmered with uncertainty. But he just couldn't help but take his eyes off this strange, black part. Since he didn't find any way to cross this river, he decided to check this area. It might be some kind of beast nest. As long as he can make his body compatible with 20% of his cursed mark progress, he might cross this river without sacrificing anything. This also means he needs to hunt for at least a rare beast that could alleviate his hunger faster. If he tried to do it with the uncommon animals, it might take him years. Jacob also buried his bags a few meters away from the river and marked the area with a special mark that only he can identify. He also marked the terrain on the map. After he was done, he moved toward the black mark at full speed. However, when he reached the place, he was astonished because he saw a valley that was closed with gigantic doors. Is this some kind of secret hub? Jacob was curious. He remembered something at this moment from Decker's journal. He had already finished and remembered who book in these 7 months and then torched it since it take too much storage. Not only did he get Decker's knowledge and research as an apothecary, but he also learned some useful information about the rare region. That fucker mentioned he bought the heart of a rat hound from some dark city. His lab was also on this side of the river, so how could he cross it on a daily basis with his weak ass? This might be the place where he got all his equipment and ration. Those genomes were the same. Realization dawned on him when he thought about it more carefully. Then it all started to make sense. Why didn't humans know about this place? Or they simply didn't have the right. Jacob couldn't help but wonder. Nevertheless, since he was already here, he won't go back without finding out what this place was, and he might find something interesting if this place was like a black market. However, this place was also dangerous, since criminals like Decker can roam in this place freely, and then there were still those 2 giants who had him flee from Decker's hideout. If they were still here, he had to be even more careful. After deciding, Jacob sprang into action. He wore his mask and hood before he walked toward the huge closed doors. When he was 10 meters away, an imposing voice rang. Only rare or above species are allowed in Dark City. If you have any identity, show it. The details will be classified. But if you're a lowly ant, scram. Jacob's eyes turned cold when he heard this voice coming from those doors. So, there was such a condition involved, huh? At least they didn't tell me to reveal my face. At least now, he knew those races from the uncommon region didn't have the right to enter this place. which made him even more curious. Jacob put his hand inside his jacket and took out a white ID card, which was none other than Decker. He never thought it would come in handy at such a time. He didn't have any ID cards from the rare region. But he can't show the Mercenary Agency or Gunsmith Guild cards because they were the Humane Kingdom, written in the Citizen section. It means those IDs were more like a disaster than help. Suddenly, a red ray shone directly on the ID card, and the ordinary white ID card suddenly shimmered in blue light, which made Jacob's eye squint. Then the red light vanished, and the voice sounded again. It's not fake. You may enter the Dark City. Remember the rules. No fighting, no thefts, and no provoking others. If you break any rules, the Dark City will be your graveyard. Just as the voice trailed off, a small door slid upward into the giant door. Jacob put the ID card away and moved toward the opening. However, just when he crossed the gate, he was met with another barricade. 4 burly armored guards were wearing masks standing straight on the other side, armed with guns and spears. Jacob's eyes contracted when he saw the cold blue spears in their hands. He knew they were probably created with a metal like a Titan iron or even stronger. As for their guns, he was even more astonished because they were all automatic AO-63 assault rifles. There was a small masked woman in a tight dress sitting behind a glass counter. She said in her eerie voice without caring about Jacob's reaction, 10 golden coin for 10-day pass. 25 gold coin for a month pass. 200 gold coins for a year pass. Which one do you want? Jacob finally turned his attention to this small woman who had dark green skin, and he knew she wasn't a human. Even those guards have dark brown skin. But everyone's faces were hidden under masks. What kind of place is this? Jacob couldn't help but ask. The woman answered nonchalantly. The Dark City belongs to a neutral organization that didn't belong to any race or religion. We don't care if you are a saint or a devil. As long as you don't break our rules, we won't take action against you. We have dark cities all over the plains, and as long as you are qualified to enter, you can enjoy a safe environment and trade anything you wish according to the Dark City level. No one will ask for your identity as long as you didn't want to show it, and no one will cause trouble here, even if they are from 3 hegemonies. If you want more information, we have a Dark City Guild book. You can buy it for 10 silver. Now don't waste my time and tell me which pass you want, or I'll kick you out in 10 seconds.